it's muted. Check 1, 2. Check. They can't hear me if it's muted, so probably just do this. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So we just got to take the volume, turn the volume down. Can't mute, otherwise people won't hear. Okay, we can hear me. Good. Thanks, Shane. Weight loss treasure chest. We got Shane. We got, hold on, I got to move some things around here. All right, well, we're just letting people roll in, and then we're going to get started in a second. Thanks, Dex. Appreciate that. Hello, Jada from Texas. Love Texas. Was just there, and I'm going to be there again here real soon. What else we got here? We got FCAT in the house. Mike. Oh, look at this. Brent, what's going on? All right, folks, we're going to get started here in just a little bit. We're kind of juggling a live event and also juggling an in-person, or no, live, virtual live, and then an in-person. So we'll get rolling soon. All right, I'm going to mute for a second. You're going to run this here. Hey, Lisa, how are you? Nope, hasn't started yet. We still got a couple people kind of coming in. So we're going to get started here in 3 minutes. Hey, Brandon, I'm going to shut the door and we can start in like 3. What? Yeah, we can start that.
For health reasons, I really need to sit.
Yeah, let's move this over here.
Mind if I move it aside?
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, slide it right over here. We could actually, we got no one here for these, so let's get rid of this.
You need help?
Yes. I need this chair slid over here, and I just need these moved to the back.
I want to do vitamin wrapping.
Oh, I'm on a lot.
So much.
So many. Yep. We'll just grab chairs. All right, let's get rolling.
So the gentleman, so he did pass away. We're working on a second policy.
Hello.
We're heading out early.
Okay.
So just don't think that you're being boring.
I'll call you out.
We have to go to Syracuse.
I understand. All right. Here, we could fill you in a little bit more after. You sticking around to the whole thing?
I'll give you a call afterwards.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I don't know if I'm gonna stick around for the whole thing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear. So,
I can give you a lot more info on it too because you're here. But yeah, if you can't stick around, just set up a call and kind of just walk you through it. There's gonna be a letter going out.
there should be, we've been trying to get a letter
Yeah.
sent out and
Yeah.
it's,
No way out to city. It's almost gonna be 2 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep. I'm in it too. In it to win it. I just know more than you do, so you'll be a lot more comfortable when you know what I know. All right, you ready to roll? Okay. All right, we're gonna play a video real quick, and then we're gonna get started. We'll just figure we'll open with a little 5-minute long video, make you guys laugh. Shoot. Brandon. Volume. Come on.
We just got.
Where I listened to the whole thing. Where, cheers. Okay, we good? All right. Where we were, wow, that was freaky. Where I listened to his stuff, and every day I send one message out to a group of people on what I took away from that. And one of the biggest things is this slide right here, the 5%. So I like to think all of you are here because you are the 5%. Actually, I don't think, I know. Because the other 95% are out mowing their lawn, doing something else. Maybe they're at the bar when they could have just came here and got free beer. Somebody left that out of the memo. But the 95% do something different than you and something different than the 5%. Who in here can tell me what it takes to be the 5%? What is the one thing you must do? Can anyone tell me? Create. It literally is that simple. Success is that simple. You just need to create. Because the other 95% that are unsuccessful, what they do is they conform. They conform to what everybody else tells them to do. They conform to what their parents have taught them, and they conform to false and failed dreams and realities. So all of you are here to learn something new, which makes you part of the 5%. And another thing about the 5% is when you look at this right here, this is a Social Security Administration statistic, and it kind of makes me sick to even look at it. 5 out of 100 people are going to be financially secure by the age of retirement. Just let that sink in. And out of the 5, only 1 will be considered what they call wealthy. How can that be? This is the United States of America. There's so much opportunity in this country. It's still the land of the free and the land of opportunity. So only 5 have figured it out. And tonight I'm going to hopefully help some of you figure out exactly what that is, what that one change is that takes you from where you're at now to where you want to be. And that's going to be different for every single one of you. And I got to first start by telling you just a little bit about how I found this. So I don't usually get into the whole story, and I'm not going to do it here, but I want to tell you because I'm from here. So everybody here is either from this area, from the Buffalo general area, or did anyone drive in tonight? Last time we did this, I had people drive in from Syracuse. You're all from the Buffalo area, correct? Perfect. So I started here. I grew up in Lockport, New York. Some of you are from Lockport or know Lockport. Not really much going on there. And all I remember is in Lockport, my parents didn't have a lot of money. My mom's favorite word was, we're not heating the outside. Everybody knows what that is, right? We're not heating the outside. So that's how I grew up. And I remember when I got to be a teenager, I started working at a farm, Reinhardt Farms, okay, at 14 years old. And then at 16, I got a real job at a restaurant called the Flippos. The owner of the restaurant treated me very badly. So one day I came in and I quit. I just threw it on the table. I had had enough. I quit. But you see, I wasn't that type that could just go home and tell mom, hey, mom, I just quit my first real job. So I had to have a plan. That plan was a clothing line called Fat Clothing Company, PHAT. Started that clothing line in my mom's basement. That clothing line is what spurred me into entrepreneurship, and I had no clue what I was doing. No clue at all. All I wanted to do was make t-shirts, print them with my art teacher, Mr. Mahalski, sell them out of my backpack, make enough money to go snowboarding on the weekends. That was my goal. Well, that business gave me the idea that I didn't just need a clothing line, I needed a place to sell it. So we had this idea to open Fat Man board shops in the Lockport Mall. Anyone ever remember the Lockport Mall? Those were my stomping grounds. The Lockport Mall in November of 1994, Fat Man Board Shops opened. It was just a skateboard, snowboard shop way ahead of its time. And how that shop opened wasn't because I figured it all out. It was because I had smart people around me. I had people that gave me little nuggets of hope, people that believed in me. But most people didn't believe in me. Most of the people I took this idea to, they had no idea exactly. They didn't want anything to do with it. I asked my dad if he would lend me money. He said no. Told me to get a job at Delphi, and that's just kind of how it all went. So the idea almost died. And then my mom, who had nothing, but in the divorce, my mom did get one thing. She got the house. So on Sunset Drive in Lockport, there's a small little 700 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house that my mom lives in. That was what she owned, and it had about $70,000 of equity in it. And I remember my mom watched all of this happen. My mom watched me almost give up on the idea to start Fat Man Board Shops. And my mom came to me and said, so what is it that has to happen for this deal to go through? And I said, well, there's this bank, M&T, that said they'd give me this SBA-backed loan, but I needed collateral. And when I told them my collateral was a baseball card collection, a 125, KX125, and a 1986 Buick Skyhawk, they almost laughed me out of the bank. So what my mom did is put her house on the line as collateral so that I could get that loan. I was 17 years old. When Fat Man opened in November of 94, I had turned 18 years old, and now things got real, because if that business failed, we lost the house. Plain and simple. So just take yourself back to when you were 18. You're the probably, anyone young, how old are you? 22. 22, anyone younger than 22? Nice try. 22, I was 17 turning 18. Just imagine the pressure, right? I knew that if I failed, I just lost our house, and I didn't know where we were going to live. So that was the start of it. Let me fast forward straight through that. Throughout this whole business, endeavor, things were going great. I became a pro snowboarder, and literally I was living what I would call a fairy tale. I was a pro snowboarder running Fat Man board shops. Life was perfect. Driving to the Galleria, or past the Galleria Mall, on that one day when on the news came that a plane had hit a tower in New York City, and then another one. We all remember that, 9/11. I knew nothing about that. It was a tragic event, but what actually followed that was a recession. So I never had gone through a recession. I was probably about your age at that time, and I'd never known what a recession meant, but I figured it out real quick. In business, that recession brought me to my knees. So much so that I couldn't even make my lease payments on I had a Chevy ZR2 S10. It was $199 a month. Isn't that kind of funny how inexpensive things used to be? Yeah, it's funny how inflation works. So at that time, I needed to get a job, and I put my resume out, and I ended up in Wall Street of all places. Now, I was a punk snowboard, skateboard kid, and now I got to put a suit on every single day, and I got to show up to this job that I knew nothing about. but I ended up spending 16 years in that business. I did very well as an advisor, but while I became an advisor, I had to change everything at Fat Man because I could no longer do the working in the shop every day. I had to work on the business, not in the business. How many of you in here are business owners? Okay, so you know what that means. At a certain point in your business, you're working in the business. And some people, some entrepreneurs never get out of that. I was literally forced out of working in the business because true as the day is long, I bet you any money I'd still be working in that business if this moment didn't happen. The moment forced me out of the business, forced me into Wall Street, which made me work on the business. It was the smartest thing I think I ever could have done because then I realized that I could scale the business, and that's what I did. But during this recession, and now that I'm working in Wall Street, things started to change. I started liking what I was doing. I didn't want to work in the shop anymore. Matter of fact, the store became kind of a burden to me. So I started just working more and more in the Wall Street field. And then I got this idea that I wanted to do real estate. I saw a show on TV, probably HGTV. And that show was a guy who flipped a house. He did it in, what is this show, 23, 28 minutes, something like that. Flipped the house in 28 minutes and made $40,000. And I'm like, damn, I'm not doing that selling stocks. I need to get into real estate. So I bought my first flip in 2006 out in Gasport, New York. Struggled through that thing with my best friend, Mike. And then by the time we actually sold that house, we thought we were going to make like 40 grand. I made $8,000, but I still made money. So now real estate was the thing. 2007 did another one. 2008 bought a dilapidated paint store. The idea was I was going to develop it into a strip mall because my lease for Fat Man board shops was coming due and they were jumping my rent up a lot. And I said, I'm going to put it to the man. I'm not paying you rent anymore. I'm going to build a strip mall. I'm going to rent the 2 spaces out and my tenants are going to pay for my rent. That was the idea. I did this in 2008, folks. You all know what happened next. Talk about bad timing, the Great Recession. So when the Great Recession hit, again, I literally couldn't pay my bills. I had a hard money loan on that strip mall that I had to pay for. I can't remember how much it was, but I had enough money in my bank account to make one more payment and then that was it. I sat my girlfriend down. She had just moved into my house, literally a couple weeks before. I sat her down one night and I said, sweetie, I need your help. I need your help paying the mortgage. I need your help paying the utilities. And by the way, I'm going to move my friend Pete into that bedroom down the hall and my friend Jessica is going to move in upstairs. As if the next thing I should have said is, any questions? I thought for sure that would have been it and she would have just left, but oh well. She didn't. She stuck around. So many of you that watch my stuff, you know my wife, Larissa. She is that gal. My little daughter, Vivi. But let me take you to the most important step, okay? I was stumbling through all this stuff, was buying real estate, building apartment buildings and everything else. And then in 2014, fell on my face again. And I fell on my face. The reason I play that video is I want you to understand it is joking around as that was about banks and about how banks are bad and, that's exaggerated. But in 2014, I had 36 units. I was doing quite well, at least I thought it was. I was broke. Anyone that's in rentals, you could say, hey, I got 80 units, but then on the other side, you're like, yeah, cash flow is always a bit of a trouble, right? It's always something going wrong that costs money. Well, that was me, but I could at least boast that I had 36, but I was going for the 37th. Took it to the bank. The bank said no. I said, why? You've given me loans on all these other properties. Why no to this one? And they said, your debt to income ratio is out of whack. You just don't fit the bill anymore. In other words, banks have a little square box. So they didn't do that mortgage. But the second thing they did is because now they had my new financials, now I don't fit in the box, they called my line of credit. That line of credit was my lifeline. I used it to renovate the apartment units. I used it for everything. Now I didn't have that. I started falling behind on my mortgages. I knew I was going to start losing things. So I sold every property that I had, and then I had to restart over. During this period of time is when I started flipping houses again. And when I started flipping houses, it was a different game. You didn't buy and hold. You just got in and you got out as quick as you can. Anyone in here flip? I know you do. Anyone else flipping? Okay. It's kind of a grind, right? So I was doing this, but somebody once at an event that I was at said this powerful thing to me. They said, the ultimate in real estate is being the bank. The ultimate in real estate is being the bank. To me, I heard it, and I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm going to flip all these houses. I'm going to make $1 million or a couple $1 million bucks, and then I'll be the bank. That was my idea. Well, I was out in Salt Lake City, and I was snowboarding at an event, but I called this guy Mike. He was a very wealthy real estate investor. He had a whole bunch of properties, multi-generational. He lent money on my properties. And I said, hey, Mike, I'm in your backyard. I've got this property and I want to show it to you. Can we meet? He said, sure, meet me at Cheesecake Factory. So I drove down there, meeting with him, and I'll never forget it. I just out of nowhere, because I was a financial advisor, I just said to him, I said, so Mike, how do you lend all this money? Without a flinch, he said, I lend from my private bank. As if I was supposed to know what the hell he's talking about. You lend from your private bank. So I'm like, okay, great. Tell me about it. I didn't know what the heck he's talking about. I thought literally Mike had a bank. Mike did not have a bank. And he told me, he said, I don't actually have a bank. What I do is I changed one thing. I changed where my savings went first. I no longer put my savings into a bank. I put it in this other machine. I said, okay, tell me about that. He said, well, I put it into a place where my money is guaranteed to earn an interest rate, and that interest rate never changes. So for those of you that have money in a bank right now, you might be getting 4%. Anyone in here getting 5% on their bank accounts? How about on online? Anyone getting 5%? Okay. Probably not, but you're probably getting 3 to 4% in the high yield savings. This is like the first time in probably a decade or longer that we've been able to get these rates. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, where can you get a guaranteed interest rate that never changes? So I was kind of stumbled by that, but Mike kept going, and Mike says, and I get dividends on my money every year. To me, dividends were only paid by stocks that paid dividends, like GM and some of the other blue chips. I'm like, okay, so stock maybe? So he keeps going on. He says it's tax-free. It's protected against judgments and liens. If I die, my family gets a bunch of money. But he said, here's the reason I do it from the private bank. You see, when you come to me with a deal, what I do is I take a loan from my private bank. So just all of you, your brains are kind of articulating this data, right? You're hearing all these things, and every one of these little things, I was compartmentalizing in a little box saying, what could this be? And then he says, he takes a loan. I'm like, I don't know what the heck that means. And I give it to you. And you pay me 15% interest on that loan. I take the interest you paid me and I put it back in the original place where it was, my private bank. But he said, here's the thing. I never stopped earning interest and dividends on all of the money that I put into my private bank, even when I took it out to give it to you. So right there, I was sitting down and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, this makes absolutely no sense. What you just said doesn't exist. So either you're completely lying to me, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And then he said, I said, what is it, Mike? And then he tells me, he said, Chris, you know what it is. You're an advisor, right? I said, yeah, of course I know what it is. But just tell me again, what is this? He says, it's a specially designed and engineered whole life insurance policy from a mutually owned company that pays dividends. Now, as soon as I heard that, I don't even think I heard the rest of it. I'm like, bullshit. Bullshit. I'm an advisor. I know what whole life is, and whole life does not do half of the things you said. No way. And that's the worst place you could ever put your money, because I was an advisor. You put your money in stocks. You buy term insurance. You don't buy whole life and do what you just said. How many of you have ever followed Dave Ramsey? He hates whole life, right? Says high commissions. It's the worst place you can put your money. Well, that's what I thought. But I was starting to think about what he said. I'm like, could it be that I just don't understand what this is? So I said, all right, Mike, help me set one of these up. He said, I can't. I learned how to do it from this guy, Brent. I said, well, then introduce me to Brent. He did that. He introduced me to Brent, and that's where the story really begins. And tonight, what I want to do is I want to show you and walk you through my journey on how I actually stumbled into privatized banking, which is what you're going to learn, which again, let me repeat, is changing one thing and adding one step. That's how simple it is. And when you do that, you will tap into something that allows your money to work for you 24/7, but yet gives you access and liquidity to those dollars to go out and do whatever it is you do. You just bought a car doing it, and you're getting all the money back for the car. Some of you will pay off debt with that. Some of you will go out and invest in real estate. Some of you will do private loans. Some of you will do private loans that you'll have to start, wondering like, when am I going to get my payments? Because there are some private loans you'll do that like something bad goes wrong. But nonetheless, think of it this way. If some of your money or the money that you use for these investments never stopped earning interest and dividends, even if the deal over here isn't going as planned, your money's still working for you. And that's the key thing. Listen, folks, if you go through your whole lives working for money, you'll never get where you want to be. And if you go through your whole life just working for money and saving money, you'll never save your way to wealth. Until you figure out how to make your money work for you, nothing will ever change. Retirement is a kind of fictitious thing. A retirement, in how we've been turned to believe it and how I used to sell it, because I used to sell 401ks and all sorts of things, is a specific age, right? 59 and a half, right, Zach? 59 and a half is the magic age. I call it 60. So when you're 60, you can finally access your money without penalties, early penalty fees, and then after that, you got to start paying taxes. Now, I'm going to get a little bit into that, but I want you to understand something here and now, that if you view retirement as an age, you're doing it wrong. Retirement is the day where the money you've saved, the money you have working for you is enough, it can make enough so that you can live the life you want. And I will tell you, to make that easier, if starting right now, you have all of your money earning interest and dividends uninterrupted, and then you just keep investing in whatever you know, like, and understand, it will be easier. That's where it started for me, and it started with a 90-minute video. Because when I left that Cheesecake Factory, I called Brent immediately, and I was like a blender with its top off. And I just said, Brent, I need this. Tell me how to do this. And he says, have you watched the 90-minute video? Now, I'm a financial advisor. Why do I have to watch a 90-minute video about this stupid thing called whole life? I know what it is. Just tell me how to do this. He wouldn't talk to me till then. I'm going to walk you through some of the things that he walked me through in that 90-minute video, but I'm going to start with the one thing is what I'm teaching you, what I'm going to show you about, I didn't come up with this. It was created by the wealthiest families in history, through the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Stanleys, all of them. Walt Disney used this, Ray Kroc used this. It's been talked about in all these books. Kiyosaki, big man, Tony Robbins there. He's the pioneer of it, okay? R. Nelson Nash. If you haven't gotten his book, Becoming Your Own Banker, grab a copy of that. I'm just trying to say that I didn't come up with this. I did write a couple books on it, and I can give you guys all the books. But it all kind of boils down to this picture. This is a bicycle. Everyone in here knows how to ride a bike, right? Anyone not know how to ride a bike? How about anyone online? Anyone not know how to ride a bicycle? You all learned how to ride a bike. And you remember how that went? You got a bike from your parents. I'm doing this right now with Vivi. It has training wheels on it. And you learned how to ride that bike with training wheels. Simple thing. Push down on the pedal, the bike goes forward. Step back on the pedal, the bike stops. Handlebars to the right, bike goes to the right. Handlebars to the left, bike goes to the left. You're all probably thinking, are you crazy? Can we just get to the point? This is the point. This is absolutely the point. You see this bicycle here? It had one change done to it. You can all see that, right? It's got like a little sprocket there on the handlebars. This bicycle has one change, and now this bicycle, when you turn it to the right, the bike goes to the left. When you turn it to the left, the bike goes to the right. There's a whole video right here called The Backward Bicycle on YouTube. If any of you want to watch it, I'm not going to waste your time today, and we probably should watch it, but this whole video starts with the basic thing of, can you ride the backward bicycle? And the answer is absolutely no. I've spoken on hundreds, maybe, I don't even think thousands, but hundreds and hundreds of stages. And I've asked that single question. Who in here thinks they can ride the backward bicycle? And every single time, there's always one person that says, oh, I could. Anyone in here think you could ride it? Even if you do, it's fine. Eventually you'd be able to, but it'd take a lot of practice, a lot of crashing, and that's just life. With the privatized banking I'm going to teach you about, it's commonly known as the infinite banking concepts. You won't get it right the first time. I'm going to show you the basics of it today, but then you have to apply it in your life. And that's what we do really well. We help you implement all of the stuff that I'm going to teach you about. But the backward bicycle is no different than money. In money, you have been taught money works a specific way your entire life. Go out, work for money, take that money, put it into the bank, and then take that money from the bank, pay your bills. Is anyone doing anything different, or was anyone taught anything different than that? You work for money, you put it into the bank, you take the money out of the bank, you pay your bills, and then whatever's left, that's your savings, right? Shouldn't somebody have told us when we were young that the most important thing in saving, or the most important thing in money, is to pay yourself first? Instead of paying your bills and your expenses first, it's going to sound backwards, but I'm telling you, this is right. You pay yourself first. The law says, law number one of wealth, pay yourself 10% of what you make. Now, I know it takes time to work up to that, But if you were to do that and you were taught that from the beginning, you pay yourself first, then from there you pay your bills. We wouldn't have the debt problems we have. We wouldn't be in the financial situation we are. The number wouldn't be 5 out of 100 that can retire successfully. The number would be drastically different. But we're not taught that. So when I teach you what I'm going to teach you, it's going to require you to undo what you've already learned about money and change what you do moving forward. And it will not be easy. For me, I fought it. But then I just learned it. And I kept being consistent and persistent at it. And I started in severe debt. This is what I don't tell a lot of people. When I got into privatized banking, when I was sitting there with Mike, I wouldn't tell Mike this because I was trying to get money from Mike. I was buried in debt. Credit card debt, mortgages, lines of credit. I was a flipper. I had debt coming out my ears. So when I heard about this thing and I watched what you're going to see, I said, can this help me get out of debt? And that's exactly what it did. It didn't just get me out of debt, but I started using it to buy cars. And some of you maybe have heard the car story of my wife. It was the first car that we really used this for. Okay, her push gift, as you would call that. And then we started using it for every car. Now, every single car, everything I finance, I use my bank, not their bank. I still use traditional banks. I want to be very clear about that. I don't like them. Brandon will tell you, where's Brandon ever he is? He'll tell you, I bitch about banks every day. Every single day I bitch about banks. Because how many of you have ever put money in a bank and then you need that money back and they won't give you all your money? Anyone ever done that? You have. Anyone else? Yeah, that sucks, huh? That's my money. That's why we did that scene in there. I've been there many times. And then when you want to pay somebody, you want to send an ACH or a wire to somebody, the bank holds your wire. I just had that happen. So nonetheless, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. You have to unlearn what you've learned about money. So let me first start with what you all know about money. And I want to give some books away. So first thing I want to ask you, and get your thinking caps on. Who can tell me what the true definition of money is? First person gets a book. What is the definition of money? Just, you can't. The two guys in the back. Anyone else? What is the definition of money?
Placeholder for value.
Okay, placeholder for value. Okay, not saying that's wrong. What else is money?
Currency.
Okay, what is currency?
A way to purchase something.
What is that called? An exchange, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you both a book. I'll give you that one.
I have both. We have,
You have both?
I have both.
Is there any you don't have?
I have both of those.
Okay. Hang later. I'll give you a copy of, well, I'll give you this one after I'm done, the new children. You already got that one. What the? I'm going to have to give you a t-shirt or something. All right. Well, yeah. The definition of money is nothing more than a means of exchange. Money for food, food for money, money for car, car for money. It's a means of exchange. That's what we do with money. But all right, let's try another hard one. What company in the world uses compound interest? What business uses compound interest? Banks. Okay. Who else? Got a quiet crowd here.
Lenders.
Lenders. Who else uses compound interest? No one wants to try it? How about no business? We use compound interest. So lenders for sure use compound interest, but think about banks. Banks are the number one answer people say. Banks use compound interest, but they don't. Banks charge us compound interest, or sorry, pay us compound interest. They charge us compound interest, but they actually don't use compound interest, which would involve them taking money, putting it into an account and leaving it sit. So how many of you, when you go into the bank, do you actually think the money you're depositing in the bank, they take it and put it in the vault? What do? They move it, right? They move it as fast as they can. They lend that money out as soon as it comes in. Matter of fact, if we got into fractional reserve banking for every, I don't know what the metric is, but somebody told me that owns a bank, if you put 15 million in, you get 120 million to lend. That's the ratio. So banks move money. Every business in the world moves money, including private lenders, including Wall Street, car dealerships. Every one of them are moving inventory off the shelves, which means their money is in motion. But what are we taught to do? We're taught to take our money, we're taught to make it, put it somewhere, 401k, put it a little bit in the savings account. We're taught to do that, and we're just taught to leave that money sit there. CDs, annuities, all those things, right? What do? You put it in there and you just leave it sit there. Well, what I'm telling you is what you're going to learn tonight involves moving money, and moving money as fast as you can for the right reasons. All right, are your dollars worth more now or in the future? You should all know this one. Now, right? So who hasn't gotten a book yet? Who wants a book? Okay, which one you want?
I'll take this.
All right. So whoever hasn't gotten a book, I got books for every single one of you. Just let us know in a second. Give them all out here. So dollars are worth the most today. We know that because inflation, right? So next year, your dollars will be worth less. They'll buy less. So your dollars are the most valuable today. How about taxes going up or down? That's a tricky question today. Is Elon actually really hate Trump, or is this a game? It's just like you could ask all these different questions. I mean, but are taxes going up or are they going down over the next 10, 20 years? They have to go up. They have to go up, whether or not we want them to or not. In one way or the other, they will go up. And even if tax rates don't go up, inflation will not stop. And inflation is a hidden tax. So therefore, our money will continually be worth less in the future, and our taxes will continually go up. But what we're told to do is take our dollars, put them in 401ks, put them in retirement accounts, leave them sit there till 59 and a half. At 59 and a half, what do? Well, we can go in, we can start taking that money out. So let's just talk about that. Your money sits in a 401k 10, 20 years. Then all of a sudden you're 59 and a half, 62, 65, whenever you decide to retire. And now you're going to start taking that money out. Let's just go over the fundamentals about money. The dollars you're taking out, are they worth more or less than when you put them in? Less, because your dollar's worth less. It buys less. Okay. The dollars you take out, are they taxed at a higher rate or a lower rate? Higher. Now, here's a funny thing. When I was a financial advisor, you won't believe me when I tell you this, but this is the truth. We were literally taught to tell our clients, hey, when you retire, you'll make less and you'll be in a lower tax rate. Can you imagine that? This, I used to tell clients with utmost certainty. Well, when you retire, you'll probably make less money, so you'll probably be in a lower tax bracket. So, hey, this makes sense. How many of you want to make less during retirement than you are today? You were in the wrong room if you said yes. So you want to make more. Okay, so those are the different lies we're told. But in a retirement account, you're going to take the money out someday in the future. They're going to be weaker dollars. They're going to be taxed at a higher rate. You lost liquidity and the ability to use that money for the things you really need. How many of you have had opportunities strike during your lives? Something comes up and you're just like, oh my God, that would be the best opportunity to invest in. Unfortunately, it always comes when you don't have the cash. I know this because my money's tied up or it's lent out somewhere and an opportunity hits me. I'm like, damn it. These things will happen. So therefore, the 401k keeps your money tied up until 59 and a half. So with that, I want to give this example, and this one usually gets a lot of people confused. So we're going to talk about buying a car. Anyone you just bought a car. Can I use you? So let's just say you wanted to buy a car. How many different ways are there to buy a car?
Pay cash.
Pay cash.
Finance it.
Finance it.
Lease it.
Lease it.
Steal it.
Or steal it. You got 4 ways you can buy a car. And I bet you all of us have done at least 3 of the 4. Some of you might have been crazy enough to go out there and steal a car. And that's a story for after we're done. We'll have a beer over that one. But if you were going to pay cash for a car, you would have to save up that money. So you would take your paycheck and the money you're making, you'd save up. Now, right? You've done this. You save it up and then you got enough money. So somebody has saved up $25,000 and they want to buy a new car. So Marius, I'm going to pick on you. You got $25,000 in the bank and that $25,000 is earning 4%. That'd be a pretty good rate today. When I used to do this presentation back like after COVID and during that low interest rate period, this was really exciting because people are like, oh my gosh, 4%. Now you can actually get 4%. It's funny how it's come full circle. So you got 25 grand in the bank earning 4% and you want to buy a car. So you walk into the bank and I'm going to play your banker and you say, Mr. Chris, I want to take that $25,000 out of this really good bank that pays me 4% because I'm going to pay cash for a car. So I say a couple things. Well, hey, have you ever thought of maybe taking a loan instead of taking all the money out of the bank? I mean, you are earning 4%. So I say that to you and you say, no, I just don't want a monthly payment. And then I say this to you. I say, Marius, listen, how about this? How about our bank makes you a loan at 6% over 60 months? And I will promise you that you will make more money with that $25,000 at 4% than you will ever pay our bank at 6% over the exact same time frame. Am I lying to you? You're making 4 and we're charging you 6, same time frame. And I just guaranteed you that we are going to pay you more in interest on that $25,000 at 4% than you will ever pay us at 6. Folks, am I lying to him?
It's true.
That he's going to pay more? Or sorry, that he's going to earn more? Yeah. But that doesn't make sense, does it? If he's making 4 and he's paying 6, most people would think, wait a second, he's losing 2%. There's no way he's losing 2. But let's run the math, because this is all this whole thing I'm going to teach you today. Against all odds, I'm going to prove it to you mathematically. That's it. It's just a mathematical game. His monthly payment, $483.32. That's how much he makes every single month for a car payment. In the bank, he's going to pay $28,999 on that car. But his $25,000 earning 4% is going to be worth $30,525. So is $30,000 more than 28? Yes. So you actually made $1,526 more by leaving your money in the bank while you borrowed from us at a higher interest rate. This confuses people, but it's literally just mathematics. Does anyone know why this happens? That's it. His 4% is compounding. So every year he's making interest on interest over a period of 60 months. So one is going up while the other one is going down. This is a fundamental thing you have got to understand. And James, if anyone has questions on the online too, just kind of let me know as we go through this. But right here, this is fundamental. If you're going to get into this game that I'm going to teach you, the private banking game, this has to be understood. Compounding interest is a very powerful thing. Albert Einstein said it was the 8th wonder of the world, the most powerful thing in finance. But the second most important thing, if you're going to be a banker, if you're going to create a banking system, you must be an honest banker. If any of you opened up your own bank, like literally, like right over here across the street, there's a bunch of land. You go buy that land, you put up a bank. You go raise a bunch of money. You own the bank. So you're probably going to borrow money and make deposits in your own bank. But imagine if you started borrowing money from your bank and you just never paid your bank back. What eventually would happen? You'd run out of money. You'd probably go to jail. You definitely would be deemed an unhonest banker. So if you're going to do what we're going to do, every time you take a loan from your own bank, you're going to pay your bank back the exact same amount you're going to pay the other bank. Because if you would pay Bank of America, let's just pretend this is Bank of America, $483.32. If you took a loan from your own bank, how I do it, and Marius, I know you are, I figure out what the bank's going to charge me on the loan, and I pay my bank back the exact same amount. And you know why it doesn't matter? Because if this was that example, which this is that example, $483.32 goes back in my account and is available the very next day the check clears. If you finance the car through a traditional bank and you made a payment of $483.32, can you just go and take $483 out the next month? That's silly to even think that way. That's the bank's money. But when you change the hat and you are the bank, it's your money. And that's what we're going to go over. That's the fundamentals of everything that we're going to discuss. So let's dive into it. There's 3 things you need to learn about tonight. Okay, the first thing is the machine. I've already told you what it is. It's a specially designed and engineered whole life, but we're not going to put money in a whole life policy and leave it sit there. Please don't do that. I'll be very upset with you. We're going to put money in the machine and we're going to immediately find a place for that money to go work and earn a higher interest rate than the cost of capital, which I'll get into in a little bit. You have to understand this, the marathon, number 2. This is not any kind of a get-rich-quick thing. This takes time. I will tell you right out of the hole, when you put money into these specially designed whole life policies, you will not have every penny you put into it for anywhere between 2 to 3 years. So if you put 10 grand in, you're not going to have 10 grand to use in those first 3 years. That everyone understand that? Let me, because that's when I say that, some people are like, well, why would I do that? Let me ask you this. If you had to give up a little bit for 3 years to get money and to make money for the rest of your life, would you do that? In other words, if you put $10,000 into an account every year for 3 years and you didn't have $30,000 to use in those first 3 years, that would suck. But then imagine from year 4 to however long you live, every year you put 10 grand in, you can take more than 10 grand out. And every year you can take more and more and more out. And you guys don't have to humor me and you can play devil's advocate with me any way you want, but how many of you would not take that deal? You got to give a little bit for 3 years to take and make for the rest of your life, guaranteed. Would anyone not do that? There's always every once in a while somebody who wouldn't. So the machine, like I said, is a specially designed whole life policy from a mutually owned company. Because we all live in New York, a very terrible state for what we're doing, there are essentially 3 companies we can use. For the rest of you over there on the online, We got a whole bunch more companies, but everybody in here gets to suffer because we live in this great, great, beautiful state called New York State, right? We love it here. We love paying the taxes and the state tax. Anyway, I'm going to get off that because I'll piss everybody off and everybody's going to leave. The one thing I want to preface here is banks, traditional banks are the #1 purchasers of whole life insurance in the world. And I can prove it because I can go right here. This is old. We got to update this slide. Please remind me to update this. 2021, as of FDIC.gov, these are the top 5 banks in this country. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, US Bank, PNC Bank. JP, I think, is a little bigger than Wells now. See these numbers over here? Those are in billions. If you add them all up, it was $75.8 billion. Banks in 2021 had $75.8 billion in whole life insurance. You can look the numbers up. How much were they now? They're well over the 100 billion, well in the hundreds. Yeah, but nonetheless, so this isn't something that, again, I've created. Banks are using this, they have been, but banks will never, ever, ever tell you to put money into a whole life insurance policy. 225 billion, as of when, 2024?
2020.
Yeah, just showing you. So banks are putting more and more money into whole life. This example that I gave, it's funny because I had you all believing that this was actually a bank. It was not. This was a whole life insurance policy. Okay, it wasn't a bank. So when the banker, which wasn't a banker, said that you're going to make more earning 4 when you're paying 6, all we did is we literally reverse engineered private banking and called it a regular bank. So this private loan that you took out from your private bank, that was from you. Now, you paid yourself back at 6%, and that's what we kind of outlined here. The 6% wasn't a made-up number. It was just what a traditional bank would charge you. When I buy a car like this Porsche out here, I'll give you an example. When I bought this car from Porsche down here, what I did is I worked with their finance department to ask them how much the rate would be. I think it was like 7.48%. So when I bought that car, I paid cash for it. I took a loan from my bank. I charged myself, and we do notes. We literally do a paper note, a promissory note for that. And I charged myself exactly what Porsche Finance would have charged me, to the penny. Because why would I cheat myself? If I'm going to buy a car and I'm going to pay some finance company a certain rate, why would I pay myself any less? In this example, it was 6% because that's what it was. All right. There we go. Sorry. There we go. First, I got to explain something. I got to show you how banks work. My clicker stopped working. We take money, we put it into a traditional bank, and the bank, as you already know, takes our money, which is a liability to the bank. Very important to understand. A bank deposit to you is an asset, feel good. But to a bank, it's a liability. And it is a liability until that bank turns it into an asset by making a loan. A loan to a bank is an asset. A loan to all of us, if any of you are private lenders, is an asset. On your balance sheet, that loan that you made shows up on a balance sheet as an asset, not a liability. Well, to a bank, it's the same thing. So when they make a loan at 7% to somebody that needs to buy a house, that's a good thing for the bank. They're making money. Matter of fact, they're making 7 minus the 4 they're paying you, if indeed they're paying you 4%. But nobody raised their hand. Nobody in here getting 4% on their money? We can change that. You are? Okay, 1 person. So 1 out of, I don't know how many people are here, 20 is getting that. How about online? Anyone online getting over 4%?
So far, no.
Yeah, rates are coming down and they'll continue to come down. Anyway, let's keep going. So the homeowner that's selling the house, the buyer pays the homeowner the money. The homeowner takes the money and does what? What they've always been taught, puts it back into the bank. The bank immediately lends that back out on a car. Car loans right now are about 8%, maybe 7s, but easily 8%. From there, the car dealer gets the money, puts the money back in the bank. Money goes back out on a home remodel loan. Contractor gets paid, puts it back in the bank. You'll notice the interest rate keeps going up, right? A house is one of the most secured lending assets that you can lend on. So the rate's lower because a house doesn't get up and move. So if they need to take it back and foreclose, it's right there, doesn't move. And it's usually in a first position, so it's just a relatively low interest or a low risk loan. A car is on wheels. So I don't know, do you guys ever have to repo cars, James? Carvana?
Yeah.
Is that what you do? Is you deliver cars and then repo them? Car delinquencies are at one of the highest rates in like 11 years. Yeah, you know? Okay. So a lot of repos going on right now, but you know, the car's on wheels, so it's a higher interest rate. Home remodel loan is typically a second position. And then over here, debt. A lot of people in debt. I think the debt number I just checked on credit cards alone is over $1.2 trillion, and defaults are I think at a 10-year high right now on defaults. But nonetheless, banks will still give you a debt payoff loan and they'll charge you 12%. The reason I showed this is what banks do. So this is what you need to do. You just got to figure out what you want to use your banking system for. Now, the bank paid you 4%. And everybody in here, I almost could guarantee would be happy making 4% because only one person said they were making 4%. So everybody else is looking at the smart guy in the room going, what bank are you at? How do I make 4%? Talk to Brandon when you're done. We'll show you how to get 4% all day long in FDIC insured bank accounts. But let's add up how much the bank actually made. The bank made 7 on the mortgage, 8 on the car, 9 on the home remodel loan, and 12 on the debt consolidation loan. You subtract out how much the bank actually paid you, and you get the net amount. If we add them all up, the bank made 20, you made 4. How much more did the bank make than you in a percentage? The math is on the screen. Okay, 60? Okay, how'd you get 60?
16.
Oh, 16. Okay, sorry. So you took the 20 minus the 4, but we already netted the 4 out. So we got 20% is the net the bank made. So how much more did the bank make than you? 500. Take the 4 that you're making, divide it into the 20, and what do you get? 5 times, 500% more. Well, when we did the research on this, we went to a website called BauerFinancial.com. BauerFinancial.com, you can all go to it. If you look, you can punch in any bank in any town, in any country, anywhere. Banks make 400 to 1,300% more than you do on the money you leave there. And the reason I show this and I drive this home is the business you want to be in is the banking business every day of the week. And that's what we're going to do now. But we're going to start with cars. That's Eleanor. Anyone ever see that movie Gone in 60 Seconds? Oh my goodness. I'm so upset at myself that that car isn't sitting out here, but these things go for like 400K now. So I'm just not quite ready to dump 400K. But the one thing that I will tell you, even, being a car person, I know you're a car person. Who else? Yeah, I know you're a car person. A lot of car people in this room. The nice thing about cars is they're fun and we enjoy them. And it's a status symbol. And there's a lot of pros that go along with cars. But the bad thing about cars is they almost all lose money, right? Almost every car you buy is going to depreciate in value. But what I'm going to show you very simply by just changing one thing and adding one step is how to get all the money back for every single car you will ever buy, drive, and own. And I can guarantee you this will work 100% of the time. It is so simple. You learned this, which, at a young age, this is a very powerful thing to learn. But we first got to start back with that machine. First off, when you think of a life insurance policy, like a whole life, and you think about the premiums that are going in, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? How many of you think a warm and fuzzy good feeling about that? No? It's a bill. It's what we all think. Car insurance, all the things with insurance on them are bad because it's a bill. It's a payment. This is a deposit, okay? Because we are depositing premiums into a specially designed and engineered whole life. This is all mindset, folks. So much of what I teach is all just about changing and framing what you view about money. If you view this as a premium payment, it will never work because every time you got to put money into your banking system, you're like, I don't want to make that payment. The bill will come in the mail and you're like, I don't want to make this payment. But if we just change that and said, okay, you have to deposit money into your bank. You'd be like, oh yeah, honey, we got to deposit money in the bank. I like that. Let's go deposit money in the bank. So that's what we got to change, the frame of how we look at it. Second, age. I hear this all the time. People, not so much from a room like this, but people are always like, oh, I'm too old to do this. I'm 60, I'm 65. I can't do this. I'm too old. We've all been taught that the older you get, the more expensive life insurance gets. And that is not a lie. It is a fact. But the way we're designing these policies, we're designing them with the lowest death benefit, the highest deposit. So we're flipping that. So age doesn't really matter. If I took a 30-year-old and a 60-year-old, putting the same $10,000 into a policy, I can tell you that they'd have the same amount of cash value, but there'd be one drastic difference in those two policies. Can anyone guess what it would be? Death benefit. Yep. You'd have the 60-year-old will have a significantly lower death benefit than the 30-year-old. So that's how we do this. And this is important, and I never get to do this, but here I can. When you reduce death benefit, if anyone knows anything about how life insurance commissions are working and how you get paid them, I'm an expert at it. I've been doing it 21 years. Do you think you get paid a commission on anything other than the death benefit cost. No, that's it. If I sell a term insurance policy, I get paid a commission on the premiums, which is 100% cost in a term policy. Because when you buy a term policy, you're buying just the protection, just the cost of insurance. Good? Okay. So when you buy a whole life insurance policy, what most people don't know is we can adjust the commission. You can go to me and you can say, hey, Chris, I want you to reduce your commission 90% because I want 90% more money. If you ever said that to your broke-ass brother-in-law who sells life insurance, they would say, no, that's not how it works. It doesn't work that way. But indeed, it absolutely does. If we design a policy and we reduce the death benefit down, that reduction can reduce our commission by up to 90%. I can tell you every single policy we write reduces our commission 60 to 90%. I did a YouTube video or a webinar yesterday, I think it was. Yeah, yesterday. And I showed that since I started doing this, the commissions that we have given up to design these policies was over $14 million. And that was a true mathematics. Actually, it might even been more. We kind of went, pretty conservative. But anyway, I just want you to understand that these are not normal whole lives. The way we design them reduces our comp, which puts more money in your pocket immediately. And I'm going to show you that. Buying a car. I hate this example because I know the math, but I just want you to understand the fundamentals around how this works. So if you were going to pay cash for a car, you would have to save money, right? Everybody knows if you're going to buy a car cash, you got to save the money up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show somebody who's going to save up $10,000 per year to buy a car. They're going to put it into a specially designed whole life. And just so you all know, and I'll show you better numbers at the end, these numbers suck. Like if your policy ever looked like this, these are awful numbers. Yours will never look like this. You put 10 in, you got $5,800 to use. Anyway, all we did is we wanted to show you the worst example of a policy so you get the concept. So we put 10,000 in for 3 years. That would be 30,000 that we put in, but if we add this up, 25 plus the 4, we've got $29,204 to use. Remember I said that earlier. In 3 years, you may not have 100% of what you put in. You put in 30 and you've only got 2904, but you still want to buy a car. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a loan from your policy for $25,000 and you're going to go buy the car. Then you're going to figure out how much you want to repay back to your bank. We're going to do $500 a month. You own the bank. You pick the number. It can be any number you want. Cheat your bank, make your bank rich, whatever you want. I told you how I do it. Can anyone repeat how I do it? I just ask the finance company what my rate's going to be. What's the best rate I can get? And I usually search bankrate.com. Will tell you what the lowest interest rate is in the marketplace right now. I look at the lowest rate and that's what I charge myself. Seems pretty simple. So here, this is 6% interest, $500 a month. So we're going to take a loan from our bank, the policy. We're going to buy the car. We're going to make $500 payments every month back to the policy. Remember that bank in the car. Remember your example. Okay, we're going to do that. So now let's just look at the math. Over 7 years, we've saved $70,000 in premium deposits. We then repaid our policy back $30,000, the exact same amount we would have paid any bank if we financed it or leased the car, 30 grand, which was 6% interest on that. So in total, in our banking system, our injection was $100,000 that we put in, 70 in deposits, 30,000 as car repayments back. So then we bought a car. So we're going to subtract 25 from the 100 we put into the system, meaning our net injection into our banking system is $75,000. Now, at the end of this period of time, 7 years has gone by. You've had this car for 5 years. It's sitting in the driveway. It is bought and paid for. You no longer owe $500 payments because you paid it off. But you haven't just paid it off. At that point in time, your cash value in your policy is $67,881. You put in 75, you've got 67,881 in the account that you could use tomorrow. You could use it now if you wanted. So effectively on that very first car that is still in the driveway, you've got 91 cents of every single dollar back for that first car. Now, when I first started telling you that I was going to show you how to get all the money back, did I say I was going to show you how to get all the money back, but only 91 cents of every dollar? I said I was going to show you how to get all the money back. This example, in this very first car, you got 91 cents of every dollar. But the car is in the driveway. The car is worth something. Even though you paid 25, you could sell it. But we're not going to sell the car. But what we are going to do is we're going to go buy another car. 5-year-old cars, I mean, if you drive the car, I mean, they get beat up, they get worn out. You bring it into the dealer, my mom, every time, 5 years on the nose, brings her car into the dealership, and I'm not gonna tell you what dealership, every time there's a critical error on the car, like it was brakes last time, and oh my God, I can't believe you're driving this car. This car is so dangerous. This is verbatim what they said. Anyone ever have this happen? Usually they do this to women, not so much men, because men are like, dude, let me show you how to check the brake pads. Right there, there's enough pad on there, there's nothing wrong. But my mom gets this, and she's like, Chris, I can't drive the car. They made me a really good deal in this new car. So we're gonna buy a second car here. So 8 years into this policy, we're not gonna make any more deposits into our policy. Now, I would never recommend you do that, but we're not going to for this example. We're gonna buy another car. We're gonna just take another loan from our policy for 25 grand. Then we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna make $500 back to the policy every single month. So $6,000 a year. So let's do the math here. No new deposits went in. We've still only deposited $70,000 plus the loan repayments. We repay $30,000 in loan repayments. So then we buy a car. So 30 minus 25, net injection, 5 grand. So let's just do the math. We started over here. We put 100 in, took 25 out. The net injection was 75. Over here, we repaid 30,000, put no new deposits in, minus the new car we bought, 5,000. So if we really want to look at how much money we made for buying 2 cars, you would add the 75 for the first car, the 5,000 for the second car, and then you would come up here and you would look at how much money you have. So that's $80,000, and you have $91,473 in cash value in your account, plus 2 cars bought and paid for in the driveway. In this really crappy example, which none of you will ever have a policy that looks like this, I just want to be clear, you made $11,473 by buying 2 cars. This is the mathematics behind it. There is no secret here. The only reason this happened is you became the bank. You know what's kind of funny, and I never tell anybody, but I'm going to tell all of you. Did you realize you could do this exact same thing? Skip the whole life. Don't even do the whole life policy. Skip the whole life. Get yourself a bank account and do exactly this. And guess what would happen? You'd get all the money back eventually for every car you buy, because you're recapturing all of the money that today you give away to the banks. You're not leaking any interest. The reason the policy should be added, and the reason I'm going to make the case of where the policy is so important, is you have earned uninterrupted compounding interest, not just on a little bit of it, but all of it. The 70,000, well, you only put 70 in on money. So whatever this cash value number is, even though you take the money out, the insurance company continues to pay you interest and dividends on every penny of your cash value. This confused me when I first heard about this. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Any of you online, does that kind of not make sense? How in the world can you earn interest on all of the money when you take the money out? Well, it's easy. You don't use your own money. And the insurance companies are one of the only financial institutions that will allow you to do this. And it all comes down to the one thing that you probably, most of you don't want to hear about, is the death benefit. In a whole life policy, the death benefit is guaranteed that it's going to be paid out. Every one of us in this room will all die someday. We will all graduate and go on to a better place. And at that point in time, if you have a whole life policy, what must the insurance company do? Pay a death benefit, right? It's guaranteed. It's in your contract. They will pay a death benefit. So what most people don't know is that the insurance company will, at any time you want, with barely any questions. Joe, what are the 3 questions they ask? How much do you want? Where do you want the money sent to? And is this part of a divorce decree? Is that it? I think there's 3 questions. You answer those 3 questions, you click a button. The money shows up in your bank account. Your bank does not even give you your money back that easy. Insurance companies will. When you take these loans, this 25 grand for the car, when you take that money from the policy, you did not take your money. I know I show it as you taking your money because I'm trying to trick you in this example, but you're actually not using your money. What the insurance company is doing is they're going into their general account and they're lending you $25,000 of their general account money. They're going into their little computer ledger, and what they're doing is just subtracting 25 grand from whatever your death benefit is. So if you died the next day after taking the loan, the insurance company legitimately will reduce your death benefit by the amount of your outstanding loan. In this case, 25 grand. But when you repay the policy back, the $500 repayments back to the policy, I don't even like to call them loan repayments, but I got to be, from a compliance standpoint, because he's my compliance officer, it is a loan repayment, but you really want to know what it is? You are just recycling and recapturing money you used to give away. Because a loan payment to me is money that I make to a bank or some institution that I never get back. In this, if I put $500 back into my policy like I just showed, how much money do I have the next day when I make that $500 payment? $500 to use. I lost no liquidity of that. It's just the cycle. But what I did, remember in that example, the $500 payment reduces the loan. Every month, my loan, that 25 grand, is being reduced by 500. The way the insurance company calculates interest is simple interest. This is another important thing, and I might be going too deep into this, but I'm trying to give you more than I normally do. When you're repaying a loan, the insurance company can only charge you interest on the remaining balance. So that $500 payment you make back to the policy loan, even though that $500 is available the next day, that is reducing the loan to the insurance company, refilling your death benefit. So the insurance company is charging you less and less interest. So let's just say an insurance company were to charge you, well, I'll use this example, 6%, which most of our insurance companies are like 5.25 right now. But let's say they charged you 6. At the end of a year, I think your APR would be in the 4% range, not 6, because you repaid 6,000 of the 25. So now you've charged interest on 19,000, not 25. So the APR is in the 4. We have a calculator that does all this. Do you see how that works? This is banking 101 reverse engineered. You're the bank. You're making payments back to your bank. You're reducing the amount of interest you will pay to somebody else, which is the insurance company. But it wouldn't have mattered because the interest in dividends you're earning on your cash value for every company in New York State is north of 5.5%. The highest is 6.4%. So just simple math. If you earn 6.4%, and you took a loan at 6, are you making a spread? Yes, and I'll get into that math. You want to make a spread like a bank, because remember how I showed you how a bank makes money? They pay you 4, charge you 7, they make a spread. We are doing the exact same thing a bank does, except for we're the ones winning, because we're the ones making the spread, not the bank, not the financial institution. I know this is a lot of numbers, but I'm now going to show you something after I talk to you about the rules. There are rules, but they're simple. And I already told you about them. Number 1, in order for this to work, you have to be saving money. And you're going to change one thing, and that's where your savings goes. So that's going to be called pay yourself first. Rule number 1. Rule number 2, you always pay yourself with interest. If you take a loan from your bank, repay your loan back to your bank, any terms you want, but just make sure you repay yourself with interest. Now, how I do this, and I'll just tell you how I do it. If the insurance company charges me 5, I charge myself 6. I make a 1-point spread, but that's not all I make. That's just the way I set it. Because as I'm paying that loan down, does my spread go up or down? It has to go up because the cost of money is going down because the insurance companies charge me interest on what? The remaining balance, right? So it's a lower interest rate, but do I ever reduce the amount of interest and dividends I'm earning on my money? Nope. As a matter of fact, that number keeps going up because that's compounding. Does that make sense, everybody? I want you to hold your questions for a little bit. That's so important. And then instead of thinking of the loan repayments as loan repayments, sorry, compliance, think of them as you are just simply recycling and recapturing your money. That's all you're doing. You're just taking your money back, putting it back in, and then putting it back out there, and you're constantly moving it. I draw circles all the time. All right, this next example, maybe you've seen this before, but I sincerely believe you can never see this enough times. This right here, when I first saw this presentation, that 90-minute video, this is what got me. This is where I was just like, no way. This is a real example. This is a chiropractor that Brent met a long time ago, and he saw a presentation just like all of you are seeing. And in that presentation, he came up to Brent after and he said, hey, Brent, I've got a problem, and I wonder if you can help me. Brent said, what's your problem? He said, well, I have $478,000 in debt. My total payments on that debt are $5,777 a month. Think about that. I mean, that's more than a lot of people make. $69,324 a year that he's just paying in loan payments. So you saw that and you were talking to me like, whoa, it's a bit of a problem. And he said, I want to pay it off like the way you just showed it. Because back then the presentation was not this. The presentation changed with this chiropractor. But what Brent said to him is he asked him one question. He said, are you saving money today? The chiropractor said, yes, I've got a 401k through my company. And when clients pay me with cash, I just put that money away. So totaling, it's about $30,000 a year that this chiropractor was able to save. we were going to take it down to 25,000. So we basically said, all right, if we just took that $25,000 that you put into the 401k in the bank and we just rediverted that money and we said 25 grand is now going to go to pay off these debts, okay? And see the interest rates. We're going to take the 25,000 he's saving and we're just going to put it right to the debts. No policy involved at this point. When we ran the math, and I could show you the mathematics, it would have taken him 19 years to pay all this off at $25,000 a year. What do you think he said when we showed him that? No. Hell no. I can't do it. So we ran some calculations. We came back to this chiropractor and we said, Mr. Chiropractor, are you willing to change one thing? And that's where that 25 grand goes first. He said, well, it depends. And he said, well, if you change where that money goes first and you never work harder, you never take on any more risk, and you never, ever, ever have to change what you're doing from your cash flow standpoint, we can pay this off in 6.5 years. 6.5 years. I'm going to show you exactly how this worked. And again, this policy, what we did in this example is we did a policy and we just used just guaranteed numbers. We just said there's not going to be any dividend paid. So I want you to understand these numbers you're going to see are reduced so that we can show this as accurately so you understand the concept, not a bunch of numbers. Let's get into it. Chiropractor, first year, stopped putting money into his 401k, so there was a sacrifice. He had to change his mental thought around that. He says, I'm going to pause saving for retirement to get myself out of this hole. How many of you think he could be able to retire if he just didn't have these debts? $5,700 a month, plus his Social Security, plus whatever other monies he had saved, he would be able to retire. But his debt was keeping him from that goal. So he put the 25 grand into the policy that we set up for him. Now, there's one really important thing, and I want you to notice this. We put the debts in order from lowest to highest. See that? Lowest balance to highest balance. That's called snowballing. There's many different calculations, but in this example, the snowball worked for him. We did not put it in order from highest interest rate to lowest, okay? That's what most people want to do. They want to pay off the highest interest rate credit cards first and then the lowest later, but that's not the way to do it. It's velocity of money that matters. We want it the lowest to the highest. So the chiropractor put 25 grand into the policy, and we immediately took a loan from that policy in the first 30 days. There will never be a policy we will design that you will not be able to take your first loan in the first 30 days, period. So he takes that out. In this example, $14,863 of the 25 was able to be taken out as a loan. So what we did is we took that $14,000, we paid off Discover, we paid off Lowe's, and we paid down Nordstrom. And when we did that, remember, we must now go to the second step. That's changing one thing. We changed where the money went first, and now we must add the second step to your private banking, and that is we're going to take this $161 a month from Discover and this $287 that we used to pay Lowe's, and what we're going to do is we're going to take that money and we're going to change the name on the check. The name on the check's no longer going to be Discover or Lowe's. It's going to be your name, Mr. Chiropractor. So, Mr. Chiropractor, I want you to go to your local bank, wherever that is, and open up a second bank account. So we did that, and you didn't know what for. I want you to then pay your second bank account, $161 a month and $287 with an automatic transfer. So he did that. So in his segregated bank account, because that's what we're going to call it, it's just a bank account, he's going to have $448 going into there every month. This is not new money. He doesn't have to work harder, longer, or take on any risk for this. This is just money he gave away to Discover and Lowe's. Does everybody understand what's going on there? Okay, let's go a little faster. Second year, 25 grand goes in. Now, chiropractor can take a loan for $16,571. Notice how that's a little bit more than it was the first year. Even though he took most of it out, it's still compounding because all of his money is earning interest. Then we took $5,374 from that segregated bank account that he was saving $448 a month in, and we're going to add those two together. The loan from the insurance company that we took 30 days, in that 30 days from the time he made that second $25,000 deposit, we're going to empty the bank account for the $5,374 if they'll actually give you that. But we're just going to make payments anyway. So we do that. We pay down Nordstrom, pay off Wells Fargo, we pay down the private loan, and we pay down his BMW loan. We started with a lot of debt. Notice now in year two, we have $378,013 in debt left. Over here, his monthly payment went from $5,777 to now he's paying and giving away $3,860. And now we've got $1,917 going into that segregated account. And again, just to recap, that $1,917, my mistake, is just the money we used to give away to the creditors. There's a lot of error that can happen here. I've seen this go south for a lot of people because they just are not conditioned to do this. They pay off the credit card and then they just miraculously spend the money that they used to give the credit card. What we've done now is we've created a whole team that works with our clients called the implementation team, and tools and software that automates this as much as we can legally. Now we've actually got a brand new thing that we're launching where we can do all this for you. We never could before, but automatically we do that to eliminate somebody just kind of slipping back into that old way of saying, oh my God, I've got $1,917. I'm going to go buy that new BMW that's $1,900 a month. It happens, but we're going to help you not do that. So we helped this chiropractor too, but he was pretty good about it. Year 3, this is the magic year. This is the magic year. In the 3rd year, the chiropractor puts in 25 grand, but immediately in the first 30 days now takes out $25,541. You notice what's different here? It took us 3 years to get here. He's now taking out more than he deposited. Now, this is an important thing because we call this the efficiency year. Joe, you call this the money tree year. Every year, for the rest of this chiropractor's life, if he puts in money, he's going to take out more than he put in. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. No hypotheticals. No, well, if the stock market does this, if Trump doesn't sneeze today, if Elon Musk doesn't get mad at somebody, like, it doesn't matter. You're always going to make more than what you put in. So now we have $25,541 from the loan. We saved $1917 in that segregated account. So we have $23,004 that we can take from there, totaling $48,545. We take that, we're going to pay off the BMW, pay off the boat loan, we're going to pay down the condo. Now, folks, we're 3 years into this process, and now $283 is owed. $2,100 is all that this chiropractor owes, and that's for his condo and his house. And he's saving $3,677. Now, there was 3 things that happened here. He paid himself first, okay? He paid himself back with the same interest he used to give to the credit cards. And he was recycling and recapturing. So here's the mathematics. $25,000 each year for 3 years. He put 75 grand into his banking system. Over here, he took loans, $14,000 the first year, $16,000 the second year, and $25,000 the third year. Took loans of $55,000. So if I asked you how much is left in the policy, all of you should know the answer. In his policy, how much does he have left? 20 grand? No. Remember, he didn't use his money. He took loans from the insurance company's general account. They lent him his death benefit. This 55 grand was not his money. It was the insurance company lending him money. So how much money does he have in the account? All of it. All of it's still there, earning interest and dividends. The only thing he has to do is pay interest on the loans. But if he's paying, and the interest used to be 4% when he had this. If he's paying 4% interest to the insurance company, but he used to give away 21, whatever that blended interest rate was, it was double digits. He's doing good, right? All right, let's keep going. Year 4, deposits 25 grand into the account. Immediately in the first 30 days, takes out $26,304 as a loan. But up to this point, he was saving $3,677. So now he's got $44,124 in that segregated account. So he's got 70 grand in this year. So he takes the 70 grand, he's only got 2 debts left. He dumps it all down on his condo, which is a traditional 30-year mortgage. Has any of you ever made a principal repayment to your mortgage? Anyone? How about online? Anyone ever make a principal repayment on your mortgage? Well, if you did, the one thing you'll find out is your monthly payment doesn't change at all, unless you ask the bank to recast it. And then do they charge now to do that? Recast a mortgage?
Yes.
I think it's 250 if you.
250 to recast. So again, the bank's going to hit you with $250 just to reduce your payment on the reduced principal. But nonetheless, this chiropractor made that $70,000 principal payment, but he still had to pay the bank the exact same amount. So his cash flow didn't change. He's still giving away $2,100, still saving $3,677, which is the money he used to give to all those other debtors. Hit year 5. This starts getting really miraculous. And has anyone got a calculator, want to do some math? You want to do some math? I usually don't do this, but because it's a live audience and I've got a virtual audience that can just leave whenever they want, I'm going to do it. Puts in 25, takes out 27. So Brandon, can you subtract $27,090 from $25 or 25,000?
7.
090.
What is it? 290?
2090.
Okay, 2090. Now divide that into $25,000.
8.36%.
So he's making 8.36%. All I did is I figured out, what did he make? Well, he made $2,090, and you divide that $2,090 into the $25,000 he put in, because really that's his new deposit. That's called a cash on cash return. That's over 8%. Not too bad, right? Remember, we initially said that these insurance companies pay, what did I say, 5.5 to 6.4%? But by the math, his cash on cash is over 8% right there. But again, add those together, he's got $71,225, which is the loan plus the segregated account. So he pays off the condo, pays down his primary house. We're 5 years in. He owes $91,000 on the house he lives in. His monthly payment for that is $1,221. He's saving $4,556. His chiropractor could stop right here. He would have been thrilled. He would have been like, I'm winning in life. My finances have never looked better. But you'd never stop short of the goal. His goal was to pay off all of his debt, not just some, all. So we got to go another year, actually another year and a little bit. So 6th year, he goes to put money into that policy. Now this is old. I want to preface this because I want to be honest. This wouldn't happen for a policy today, but back when we did this policy, the rules were different with the IRS MEC limits. So when he went to put 25 grand into his policy in this year, the insurance company would not take it all. I don't want to get specific about this, but if any of you want to kind of know, there's IRS rules for life insurance that makes it, it allows it to be called life insurance. If you exceed those rules, which is putting too much money into a policy for the amount of death benefit we build, which like I said, we reduce the death benefit down, then you MEC the policy. All that means is the IRS then looks at this and says, ooh, now we can tax this like an investment, so we can't MEC policies. To not MEC them, what we had to do is reduce the chiropractor's deposit into the policy down to the minimum, which was 10 grand. So he does that, and immediately in the first 30 days takes a loan for $13,092. Now hold on, the last time when you ran that, that was 8-point-some%. Let's call it 8.3% or whatever that was, 8.36%. He put 10 in, and he took 1392 out. You don't need to be good at math to understand that's a over 30% cash on cash return. If you put 10 grand in the bank and you went back to the bank at the end of the year and you took 13 out, you would think you probably died and walked into heaven, because there's no bank that would ever do that, but the insurance company does, but they don't. It's just your money never stopped earning interest and dividends. So 13,000, he got so excited about that. He said, well, I want to continue putting the 25 grand in. And we had to break the news to him. Well, just like a traditional bank, there is never just one branch office. You ever notice that? Bank of America, M&T has a branch in every corner out here. So M&T Bank, they want to raise more capital, they open another branch in another town, and they keep doing this. Your banking system operates the same. When you want to expand the amount of money you're putting into your private bank, you have to add branch offices, which is a second, third, and fourth policy. Don't be in a rush for this. You only add a policy when you exceed the contributions you can put into the first one. Am I clear about that? That's very important. So the chiropractor said, hey, I want to do a second policy. So he did, put 25 grand into the second, so he's now putting 35 in, took loans immediately, and I'll just wrap it up because it's super simple to see what happened. He had $54,678 in loans he could take. He was saving $4,556, which is $82,000. He pays his house off. He's 100% out of debt in 6.5 years. Now, what the chiropractor did, and I never say this because I'm trying to fit this all into an hour from a stage, but now because I can, what the chiropractor is now going to do is take this $5,777 and change where that goes. He's no longer going to leave that in that bank account. Because why do we want to leave money in a traditional bank and let them use our money when we have our own banking system? So he took the $5,700 and he applied it back to his policy to repay the loan. Now he's reducing the amount of interest. And when he does that, he's making more and more money, but loses zero liquidity. Every penny of this $5,700, if he put it into the bank, he's got 100% available, right? If he puts it in the policy, how much does he have available? 100%, the same. So why would you let the bank use it when you can put it into your bank and make more on it? That's all we're doing. So he does that. This is what they used to look like, but I haven't updated the slide. This is the map that we did for this chiropractor. This is his actual map. So we used to create spreadsheets that we would map out everything I just showed you year by year. And our team, which is called the I team, goes in and helps our clients manage this. Because as I was going through any of those numbers, was anyone thinking, holy crap, I would never remember to do all this? Anyone? That's what I did. When I first started this, I put $1,000 a month into a policy. That was my very first IBC policy. And when I did that, every single quarter, that team, Jonah was actually his name, Jonah Do, would go in and we'd take a loan every quarter. And every quarter, whatever we paid down, and I wasn't able to pay off all my debts, but if I paid a credit card down by, let's call it $5,000, the next month I would look at that credit card statement and I would look at, here's what I used to pay, here's what they're required me to pay now. The minimum payment reduced. That was the amount I recycled and recaptured. So I didn't do anything fancy like this. I just didn't have the money when I first did this. I was recapturing what I could. So I'm just trying to explain what I showed you is the chiropractor. Your situation will be different. Mine started very slow, but quarter by quarter, I made more. Quarter by quarter, I paid off more. And quarter by quarter, I recaptured more and more money. If that chiropractor were to continue making payments on the condo and the house, like most people would, especially today, most people would say, oh, my mortgage is only 3% or 2.5. I got one of those really good COVID mortgages. And they would continue making payments on that condo and that house. They would pay $493,967 back to the bank. And they would think they won the game because they would think, oh, Mom, my interest rate was low, very low. What you all don't understand, and I don't have time to get into it tonight, but if you read the small print on your mortgage, you're not paying 3% or 2.5. You're paying like 80% in the first couple of years, the first 7 years to be specific. Look at it. It's the velocity of money. The banks win. They flipped it upside down on us. They put it in bold print in the mortgage statement, but nobody reads that because all we're focused on at that point when we're reading that mortgage document and that mortgage that's been approved is what? How fast can we close? How fast can we move into our house, right? You're not reading all that crap. Because if you did, you'd never sign that son of a bitch. You'd never sign it. Could you be like, wait a second, hold on a second. How much money are you guys taking? So even if you've got a low mortgage, like this chiropractor could have argued he had a low mortgage, if he just put the money into the policy, paid the mortgages off, and only earned 4%, okay, you're making more than 4, but I just reduced it. The chiropractor doing exactly the same payments as he would have made to the mortgages would have $749,611 in his bank. None of it would have leaked, and he would have made interest on all of it. That is the real numbers, and that's why you got to just look at it. Now, I'm going to do just a couple seconds on Private Money Club. Private Money Club's interesting. If any of you don't know what it is, it's literally a dating site for money. I started it almost 4 years ago now, and it started at the point when I had all those rentals, and I got sick of it during COVID because the state literally said that your tenants can live for free. And anyone remember that period? How many of you have real estate? You remember that vividly, right? Literally, the state said your tenants can live for free. Well, I was so lucky that I had a bunch of properties over on East and West Side, and those clients literally took that seriously. And they just stopped paying my ass. And I had a whole bunch of rentals. We had 91 doors, and I don't remember how many were not paying me, but it got really tough. So I just literally said, piss on this. I listed every single property. That realtor was very happy, Anas. And she sold all my properties. We were paying tenants to let us show the property on a Saturday, Sunday. I got really lucky because during that period after COVID, houses were flying off the market. Like we were getting good money for them. We were selling them in a weekend, and that's how I got out. But when I got out, I remember now all of a sudden that one mentor a long time ago that said the ultimate in real estate is being the bank. I was using the infinite banking concept. I had used it up to that point. I used it for paying off debt. I used it to buy cars. And I used it to fund, at that time it was Flip Out Academy, one of my businesses, and pay payroll with that. So I'd used it all those things. But I wanted to start lending because I remembered when I was flipping house, I was borrowing lots of money. And I always remembered when I'd look at the final statements, the person who always made the most was the hard money lender and the private lender, whichever one I did. Every single time, it was rare that I could beat that son of a pup. And that son of a pup never had to lift a hammer, never had to do anything, didn't have to deal with home inspectors, didn't have to deal with property managers, didn't have to deal with realtors and attorneys and, oh God, building inspectors. I had a bunch of money and now I needed to lend it and I wanted to be the bank. And I thought this is going to be easy. I started going to RIAs like this and I started just saying, hey, anyone got a deal they need money from? or 4. And everybody that had a deal brought me their deal, and their deal was always on a piece of paper, usually a lined piece of paper, and it was an address. And I started thinking about this, and I was like, great. You have a packet or anything on this? No, you can look it up. Here's the address. Now I'm supposed to go and do all the homework to understand what your property is and do this. So I was just like, this is stupid. There's got to be a place online that just has deals with all the specs and everything on there that I want, that I could just go on and just pick. And I remember sitting at a bar, and I think it was in Los Angeles. I was speaking, and I was with Steven. And I remember Steven, I said to him, I said, I got this idea, Steven. I said, there are only 2 types of people in the world. There are people who have money, and they all have a problem from what I've seen. They all want to make more. And I said, then the other side of the coin, and I was using a coin at that time, I flipped it over, I said, the tails are people like I used to be who needed money, and I needed money to make more money. I said, those are the only 2 types of people, and from what I can find, there is nowhere that brings people with money together with people that need money, where both of them can solve each other's problems. This was a simple solution to what I figured was a big problem, and I'm just like, you know what? There was a time many, many years ago where when I wanted to go on a date with a girl, I actually had to go to a bar. I had to go up and buy her a drink and actually talk to her. Today, shit, we just go on Tinder and we just go on a dating site, and that's how we go on dates. And I'm like, that's what we need, is a dating site, a Tinder for money. That's Private Money Club. So when I created Private Money Club, what I started doing is, we launched it, and it started with a Slack channel. Then we created this were any of you around during those years? I think Joe was. You were, like the old Slack years. And then remember, we built that really crappy website that didn't work, but we still were able to do it. And we're just figuring it out. It's come a long way, folks. It's got 8,500 members. There's been hundreds of millions of dollars of deals that have funded on PMC. And it's literally become the largest private lending community that there is. So if any of you are somebody that has money and wants to make more, or somebody that needs money for their real estate deals, you owe it to yourself to go to privatemoneyclub.com. Go there. Create a free account, because you can go on and do it totally free. Go in there, start playing around, look at it, go to the community, go check the deals out, post the deal, try to raise money. You can be a paid member. It just gives you more. It's like any other paid service, right? You pay for storage. You get more photos, easier use of the site. Anyway, but I'm not trying to sell you PMC. But the reason I wanted to talk about PMC is, now that I had this site, now I have my own private banking system, I said, you know what? Instead of lending money from a self-directed IRA, which I do, or from a bank account, what if I put the money in a policy? Then I'd lend the money from the policy on a deal in PMC. We got to update this. This should be like 12 to 15% today. Then I take the interest that the people pay me from the loan, and I run that interest back into the policy as a loan repayment. I started doing this. I do this a ton now, and so does Joe, so do a lot of other people in here. And doesn't that make sense now, after you've seen the car example and you've seen the debt payoff example? Like, now I'm making money twice on every single dollar. Just imagine that one example in the 3rd year. You put 25 in, you take more than 25 out. So if I put 25 in and I took more than 25 out to lend it out at 8%, am I not making money twice? And then every year, that money you make gets more and more and more, and that's all we do. And here are all, this is very old, but these are the deals that go up on there. First lien, 12%. Community, it looks so much different. Please remind me to update all these slides. We've rebuilt it. But Money Talks, Private Money Club speaks its language. How do you need an elephant? One bite at a time. Anyway, the rest of this is kind of just joker stuff. I didn't really talk about the death benefit, but I do want to say that every one of the policies we designed has a death benefit. Although in the beginning, it will be less than a regular life insurance would be for the dollars you're putting in. Every year you put a deposit in, your death benefit goes up and up. And over a long period of time, you'll actually have more death benefit after like 20 years than you would with a regular whole life policy, even though you designed it with initially having less, because you're forcing money into the policy, which is forcing the death benefit to go up. Because what a lot of you don't know, you can never have more cash value than you do death benefit. So the insurance company, every deposit you make, every time your cash value goes up, which we're forcing cash value to go up, the death benefit has to go up. And it goes up, 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 and eventually it starts looking like this. So eventually over time, you have a bunch of death benefit. So I have a young one. I have a 5-year-old. I'm going to wrap with this story right here. I'll just put this. Oh, this is a good one. Oh, what happened? Oh, I clicked too many buttons right as I was getting to it. But Warren Buffett says, and he's the only one that can get away with this, if poor people would just do what rich people do, they wouldn't be poor anymore. And that sincerely is the truth. And then Will Rogers, which I got his quote in here somewhere, says, the biggest problem in America is not what people don't know. He says the biggest problem in America is what people think they know that just ain't so. Before some of you came into this room, you had a specific idea of whole life, and you probably a bad one. And you had a specific idea of how money worked. And hopefully, if I've done my job up here and the time you've given me today, I've changed that viewpoint for you. And you now understand that there's a whole nother element. I touched the bare bone basics of how this works, but at least you understand the basics. If any of you were interested in talking to us, on everybody's table or on everybody's chair there is a packet. I urge you guys to take these home. There's a bunch of videos and stuff, but there's also a sheet that you should have been given that allows you to put your name, your phone number, and an email. If you want to book a call with one of us to discuss how this could work for you, just write your name, number, or email on that paper, leave it with Joe, myself, James, Brandon, anyone, and then we'll book a call with you and we'll go over your situation. For any of you online, that's why we did this QR code. Just get your phone and scan it over that little bugger. It'll give you a chance to book a call. And I'll make one promise to you on that call, no one will try to sell you anything. And I'll tell you why. We don't have to. We've never, ever had to sell anything to a client because all we do is we first find out what the needs and goals of the clients are, and then we solve the problem mathematically. And if we solve somebody's problem, and whatever that problem is, if we can solve it, we don't need to ask for your business. You're going to just say, hey, can you help me do that? And we will. So that's pretty much what I got for you, but I'm going to leave that up for a second. I did now want to show you, can you pull up that other thing, if it's okay, and then I want to answer questions. Remember I told you those two examples I gave you were terrible? I said these are nothing like what they look like. So what I figured I would do is just have him pull up what they actually really look like. I got two examples because there's ways you can do this. So some people will start policies like I did in the beginning, and they'll put monthly deposits, premium deposits in, or they'll just do an annual amount each year, okay? And that's up to you. We don't tell you how much to save. You tell us how much you want to save, and we build the policy around that. If somebody were to, I just like using 10,000 because it's an easy number. If someone were to say, I want to save 10,000 a year, no, that's the most you can ever put into that policy. You can't one year say, hey, I got extra, I want to put 15, and you can't do that. The IRS code will not allow it the way we do them. You can put 10 in. But let's just say you have a bad year, okay? You have a bad year and you only can put $4,000 or $3,000 in. We design the policy's flexibility to fit whatever you want that threshold to be. Somebody could say, hey, I want a policy that I can put 10 grand in, but I want my minimum to be only $2,000 a year. In case things get really bad, I know no matter what, I can put 2 grand in. So we build that flexibility into the policies. All right. Let me just get to the illustration. Here we go. All right, a lot of numbers, but all I want to do is I want to show you the things that I've already told you, but up to this point, everything I've told you, you pretty much would just have to take my word for it, right? You'd have to be like, all right, well, he says the death benefit's going to be more, so it is. He says the policies are better than the ones he showed, so they must be. So here's an example of just somebody putting in $10,500, 45-year-old. I think this was based on probably me a couple of years ago. The death benefit starts at $605, and then over here, so you can see the guarantees and the cash value in this one shows 0. It's because the way we designed it. If the dividend gets paid, oh wait, this isn't the right one. Sorry, sorry, I got the wrong one. You know what this is? I thought that was wrong. This is a normal whole life insurance policy that you buy from your brother-in-law. You'd put $10,500 in. Joe, you should have caught me on that. You'd have no money in the first year, no money in the second year. How many of you think that would be a good policy to buy? 0 money. Let's see, these are the traditionals. Okay, this is one of our designs. So this person had 100 grand sitting in the bank, and they changed where the 100 grand went first. So they got a chunk of cash in the bank, and they want to dump it into the policy and have access to it. We call that a dump in. So this person dumps 100 grand in. Maybe they had a property they wanted to fund. Maybe they wanted to pay off a car loan. That was what the money was for. And they're going to fund it with $10,500 per year. The way we did this design is what we would call a red line, okay? We built this for the maximum efficiency you can. So the only thing you're not going to get in a design like this is lots of flexibility. Your max is $10,500 per year. Your minimum in this one would be $8,822. So you got to understand that. If we want more flexibility, we'd have to reduce that dump in. But let's look at the most important numbers over here. You put 110.5 in, and you have access to 102, 187. 92% of your money is available in that first year. Second year is the most impressive thing. You put 10,500 in the second year. So let me give you an example. let's just say, can you be my guinea pig? You need $100,000 and you're willing to pay 12%. This person's name's Bucky Doe. Bucky Doe takes a loan from his policy for 100 grand, lends it to you for 12%, okay? How much money's in the policy after the loan goes to you? 102. How much is he earning interest and dividends on? 102. Now you're paying him interest of 12% on that money. He takes that money and rolls it back in. I just want you to understand, even if he takes all of this out, he's still earning interest on that. But the second year, puts his deposit in, $10,500, has $12,097 of money available to be taken out. That's a 15%, 15.21% cash on cash return in the second year. Remember that chiropractors took, how many years was that? Like, well, it took 3, but he didn't make much. He made like a couple percent, but it was like the 5th year. No, the 6th year, he made 30, but the 5th year he made 8. That was 8%. In the second year in this policy, it's 15%. But I want you to look over here to the death benefit. He starts with 1.53, then 1.5, and then 1.566. You see how we're pushing the death benefit up? We're almost increasing the death benefit so that we can take extra money out, although that's not what we're doing. That's just how they work. But every year that we put money in, 10.5 goes in the third year. Now we have 12,811. Now, one other thing we started doing recently, because a lot of people would come to us and be like, oh, that cash on cash thing, like I'm still not making money. Look, I put in X amount. They add up how much they put in total premiums, and they subtract it from their cash value. This is called cumulative returns. It's a viable return. On a cumulative return basis, it takes this person 4 years to get 100% of their money back. So in the 5th year, this particular individual, if all they did is put money into this policy and they never took any money out, they just left it sit there. In the 5th year, they made $2,663 and they've got a $1.6 million death benefit. And every year for the rest of their life, they will make money on that. Please explain to me why anybody would ever go out and buy a term policy and invest the difference when this is guaranteed. I could do this, and then I could take the 102 of stocks. If you want to invest in the index 500, S&P 500, take the 100 and put it in the S&P 500. You're still making money twice, because whatever the S&P makes or loses, you make, and then you're still making money here, but you get it all back. I just don't understand the buy term invest the difference thing. I really don't. And this is kind of like your cousin. It is. His cousin works for Primerica, loves buy term invest the difference, fights this. By the math, and we did a whole white paper on this, by the math, you can't beat this. There's no buy term invest the difference person that can mathematically prove that their system is better than this, because it mathematically doesn't pencil. But that's why we do this. So you literally get every penny back. And so when I say this, I can't compliance-wise say that the death benefit didn't cost you anything, because it did. You had to put the money in, but you get all the money back, guaranteed, and then you make money. So all I wanted to do is just show you what they really look like and how we can design them. And now let me answer some questions. Yes? What about year 9? Oh, yeah. So let me talk about year 8 here. See how this goes from 10.5 to 8,822? Remember in the chiropractors, you went from 25 down to 10? Same idea. What happens here is we're going to drop the death benefit. So we're going to drop the term insurance rider, because we do use a term rider in the 8th year, and that's only on there for IRS reasons. So you can see now we're going to go way down to 439,000. Now we don't have to drop the term rider, but for maximum efficiency, when we're really just trying to get cash value, we don't want that extra cost. So we get rid of the term rider, and then we repopulate the death benefit over time, which if I had another sheet, that's 64. By the time this person was around their life expectancy, they'd be back to right around this. Okay, but it took time to get there. Again, I'm not telling you all that you put this in because you're going to maximize your death benefit. It's the exact opposite. You're not going to get the maximum death benefit. You're going to get the maximum cash value. But look at this. In the 8th year, when we dropped that term rider, we jumped from a 56% cash on cash return to a 96% cash on cash. How many people really care anything about a 5% loan interest rate when you're getting those kind of returns on it? So I just wanted to show that. All right, so let me answer some questions. What's that? Online can't hear me?
So they can hear.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. So who has questions for me on this? Please.
So a million for,
What?
I haven't talked in advance.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see what he's saying. So the online can hear you.
the death benefit of $1,600,000.
Yep.
You dropped it and it went down to 430. Where'd the money go from that?
That was a term insurance policy. So these policies, we can add what's called a term rider onto
Right,
the whole life. And what that's there for is to make sure that we can dump all that money in the early years. So the IRS rule is 7 years. It's called the MEC 7 pay. So for 7 years, we have to have that extra death benefit on it in order to be called life insurance under IRS guidelines called 7702 or MEC 7 pay rule, but that changed at 7702. I don't mean to recite tax code, but I know it a little well. So all we're doing is we're getting rid of the term rider and whatever expense came along with that to juice the cash value growth.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Kind of.
Well, what I want it to make sense.
It's a law, and I probably can't get away with that. So what's the difference?
Well, I mean, when we design these, we can design them so you could say to me, hey, I don't want to lose that much death benefit. So we could basically build it so you have more death benefit in those early years and it doesn't fall off that much. This one's pretty drastic because remember I said this is redlined. We literally built this policy so that it had the maximum cash value with very little attention paid to the death benefit in those early years.
Got it.
Yeah. But yours could be done completely different than this one. This is just an extreme example of how we redline the policy. Yeah. Yes.
We got a question from Ryan asks, so I have a guardian policy and I can fund it any day as money comes in. Would I incur less charges if I dump it monthly or quarterly? When I set it up, my thought process was the quicker.
Yeah, I mean, the faster you get the money into the policy, the faster it's going to earn interest and dividends. So if you did monthly, you got 1/12 of your money going into the policy every month. So therefore, it's going to grow a little slower than if you did quarterly, because now you got a quarter going in and earning. The difference, if we did the math, would be very little, but it's still going to be more if you do quarterly. And then if you do annually, like if you just put money in once, that's the most efficient, because now all the money is earning money immediately when you put the money in. I missed the Guardian part though. The Guardian policy.
He takes that alone, it's not.
Well, yeah, that's one important thing. Guardian's one of the companies we use in New York. I have one of their policies. They're great, but they're a direct recognition company. All you need to understand is we kind of need to go back in this presentation to the point where I said that you're earning interest and dividends on all of the cash value when you take loans. Guardian is what's called direct recognition. I didn't need to complicate things, but every example I gave is what's called non-direct recognition, meaning the insurance company does not recognize the loan. All the other companies, like Security Mutual, Mass Mutual, One America Lafayette, are all non-direct recognition. Guardian, on the other hand, is direct recognition, meaning when you take a loan, so let me give this example where we gave a $100,000 loan in the first year, Guardian would recognize that loan and reduce your dividend payout that year because you took the loan. So Guardian has a big negative to them because of that direct recognition. You're not gonna make as much. I have a really good YouTube video. I don't know the person's name. Who is this that I'm talking to?
This was Ryan.
Ryan. I have a really good YouTube video that I did showing side-by-side comparisons of direct recognition versus non-direct over a period of 20 years taking loans. So you can see it in the first 5 years, negligible difference, like very small. But if you do this over a period of 10 and 20 years, it's a big difference in Guardian.
All right. We've got a question here from Doug. Doug asks, can I use the dividends? Oh, excuse me. Can you use your cash value to fund the annual premium?
Oh, that's a good question. Not so much. You could, but you wouldn't want to use your cash value to fund your policy. You're literally stealing from your bank. But what you could do, and do I have the yeah, I do. I have the dividends. There's a point in time in almost every policy where the dividend will be enough to cover the premium. So there's an option on every one of these policies where you could take your dividend, and instead of have your dividend increase your cash value, you could use it to make your premium deposit. And at the end of the day, like it still grows your policy, not as fast because you're not reinvesting. It'd be like an example of that would be you buy a high dividend paying stock, and every year you take the dividends out and you just spend them, okay, and you put them in a bank account. That would be the equivalent of kind of using your dividend, because you're taking part of your gain out of the policy just to make the premium deposit. Although it's still building the policy up, it's not growing as fast. But yes, you can do that. Another thing you can do, and every single policy we design, anytime after the 10th year, you could just say, hey, I no longer want to make premium deposits. You RPU the policy. What the insurance company will do is go in and make a calculation. This is important to understand for the death benefit. They will say, okay, over 10 years, the premiums that you've paid in buy X amount of paid up insurance. So they then will give you that paid up. So in that case, maybe in the 10th year in this, maybe they say 300,000 is fully paid up. So they'd give you 300,000, but they would get rid of all these premium deposits. I have, just so you all know, I've never, ever, ever, out of the thousands of clients we have nationwide, had one person do an RPU, because when I show them the math on that, and I say, why would you ever want to not put $8,822 in when that $8,800 is $19,000? If I legally could do this, I would say to the person, sir or ma'am, tell you what, I will lend you the $8,822, and in 30 days, just pay me back the full amount of the increase. There you go. You no longer have any premiums. Just every year, I'll just lend it to you, and you just pay me all the interest that you earn. I mean, it's kind of silly. Why wouldn't you put 8,000 in to get 19,000? The only time I would say that could happen is if somebody like hit a very rough medical situation, or they've gotten a really bad financial position, and then they can do that RPU. Any others?
Currently, no.
Chris, I have a question.
Shoot.
Just curious. So let's just say hypothetically you have a monthly budget of $10,000.
Okay.
Household budget. And like the dentist there, you had, let's say half of it, 5,000 was debt, fixed debt. The other 5,000 is discretionary, variable, utilities, all your normal expenses. I've been told it doesn't make sense to take that other 5,000 in variables and apply this toward this concept.
I would not allow somebody to do that.
And why is that?
So there's two schools of thought. First off, most people would do it wrong, because the way I do this is we're putting money into it so that we can take the money out to make it go earn a higher interest rate than what the cost of capital is. If I were to put money in and then take this cash value out to pay bills, that money's no longer working for me. So I'm still just making money one time. So that's the reason I don't do it, because typically there's more room for error there and more room for failure there than there is gain. Now, what can it work? Yes, in Nelson Nash's book, he gives an example. I don't remember how long, 15 years or 20 years, or what point was it? 20 years. He talks in that book, he says after 10 years or 20 years, you want all of your income going into the policy and you want to pay all your bills out of that. Now, let's just look, because we got the numbers here. 20 years. I put $8,822 in, I can use $30,000. Does it matter if I use $10,000 of the $30,000 to pay groceries, diapers, going out for beers and drinks? No. But would it matter if we were up here? Yes. So most people, the reason we don't teach that, and I know Nelson does, is because we don't want people setting up the false pretense that they're going to put money in the policy, immediately take a loan from the policy and pay their bills, and they're going to get ahead. Because it's going to be probably 5-6 years that before they ever start getting ahead on that.
So they're not getting ahead by the fourth year?
I don't know if I have an illustration that's good to show that. They might be. See, I don't have that one up here. Let's see.
But if you have $5,000 from bills per month, you would want to pay yourself.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find an example here without a dump in, but I'm just not seeing one. So let's say somebody wanted to do that. This is the closest I'm going to get to that example. They dumped 10 grand, 14 grand in. So sorry, the way we ran these illustrations, we were making a point. We redlined this policy and put 90-10. So 90% of the money is going to paid up additions, 10% to base, which severely impacts the death benefit. You see how low the death benefit is? So in an example where somebody wanted to build a policy to pay expenses out of it, in that example, 10,000, 5 is discretionary, 5 is, what did you say the other 5? Fixed, okay. So they do that. They'd have to be built this way because this is going to give you the best probability of hitting that efficiency point, but you can still see you're at a loss in the first year. So in that case, now this person took a loan, they're at a loss. So what money are they going to use to repay that loan? So now they've got a loan that can't get repaid to the policy that the insurance company charging, say, 5.25% on. So now we go into the second year. Now we're positive. We made 904, but now we have to pay interest from that first year's loan that we didn't recapture. We're going into this in a negative. So we're basically going in behind the 8 ball.
Mhm.
If somebody did that, it's going to take them 5, 6, 7 years. We could run the math before it ever started to make sense. And then at that point, do they make it that far?
Right.
Because the person that's living paycheck, I don't want to call it paycheck to paycheck, but they're bringing money in and they're spending all that they bring in. Like, if we're doing that, could this work? Yes. And the benefit to that would be we got a death benefit, right? So that's a really good benefit in those early years. But my concern is this person going to be able to maintain this and continue this into the future? And are we going to have any kind of a windfall to try to catch up from that first year negative draw because the interest the insurance company charged? I know I'm getting technical with you. Hopefully you're following it. I'm just a guy that I know how it's worked for me. I know how I teach it. I know it works 100% of the time if people do what I tell them to do and what I teach. And I know that there could be a higher probability if I started teaching this. Would I get a lot more clients? Oh my gosh, yeah. Imagine if I went out and I just said, hey, everybody, like, use this to pay your bills. Everybody becomes my client. Where right now, like, I only can work with people that legitimately are saving money.
Well, my thought was that you're paying it every month anyway, and you can discipline yourself to actually make the payments, timely and do the right process. And if you have 90, if you can absorb that extra 10%, for the first few years, the policy, then
it would make sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah. If you had somebody that was diligent, that really had a strong sense of money and you knew that it was going to follow through, then I would probably say, okay. But I would literally probably make them sign something explaining that this is going to lose you money for the first couple of years. Because I would never want to come back and then all of a sudden now I got an arbitration case because they're saying, hey, you said they was going to do this and it didn't. I lost money.
Well, people are paying their credit card bills, aren't they?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
That's variable. That's
That. I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole all night long. I'm very particular about how I teach it and what I do. And I know there's a lot of guys in this space, that are doing that because, hey, it's an easy sell. I just don't do it that way.
Okay, we have a question here from Shane online. Shane asks, does the term rider lock in your insurability, and can it be used to open another policy on year 8?
Great question. So that's kind of referring to more like a convertible term. So when we put a term rider onto the policy, this is 252 at this point where we drop it. What they're saying is, could we convert that into a permanent policy? The term riders on the whole life policies are not convertible, so we wouldn't be able to do that. So you'd have to do a standalone convertible term in order to be able to convert that into a whole life. So technically, no, we wouldn't be able to do that with the way we design them. But what we could do is, instead of dropping the term, could we leave the term in the policy? Yeah. And just like any other term policy, you keep that death benefit on the policy. It would come at a cost because term insurance always goes up in cost. I mean, we could fix the cost probably for 10 years. And I know One America, if I'm not mistaken, and Security Mutual, I think they have a 20-year rider. So we could put a 20-year term rider on. It would hurt your cash value in the early years because the cost is higher in those early years, but it would remain level for 20 years. So you'd have more death benefit for a 20-year period until that term insurance falls off.
Okay. We have another question here. I'm 35. How do I retire at 55 and still continue feeding my policy with the premium payments?
That's 20 years. You absolutely could do it. I mean, 20 years is a lot of time for compounding. Just look at any of these numbers. All I'm doing is showing 20 years. So the other beauty here is, remember, you said a magic thing. What age do they want to retire at?
55.
55. So remember, if all your money was in a 401k or any type of qualified retirement plan outside of a Roth, you would pay an early penalty fee of 10% to take money out pre-59.5. So here's a strategy. Let's just say this individual, and I'm just going to hypotheticalize on it, has a 401k that they can't touch till 59.5. They want to retire at 55. They start a policy like this. They maybe use it to make more, but whatever. They just start this. Then when they hit 55, they just start taking draws from the cash value of the policy. Where am I at here? Cash value.
2 left.
There we go. 55. They start drawing an income out of this to support them for the 5 years. And then after the 5th year, they revert over and start drawing down the 401k when they can. And another thing, I did a whole study on this. It was actually a CFP that did it, and I modified it. Let's say somebody wanted to retire at 55. You do that same thing. Supplement your retirement for the 5 years. Then you start drawing from your 401k. A recession hits, markets tank. You definitely don't want to take your money out of a 401k when the markets are going down. You'll never recover because of the drawdown. So what you do is you flip over to this and you start drawing off of the cash value here when the markets are in the tank. You leave the money invested, markets come back, they turn around, they start coming back. When you're back whole on your investments, you start drawing back from the investments when they're making, you stop drawing from here. It's called a volatility buffer. You use your policy to buffer any volatility in the markets for retirement. I know I'm kind of dancing around the main question, but the whole point is you got 20 years to build a retirement strategy that works for you to retire at 55. Could be done all day long as you can save enough money to get enough cash in there so that when you retire, you'll have enough. Now, another thing, let's say at 55, you would not have enough cash value to earn. You could add a little risk. You go to Private Money Club and you start drawing from Private Money Club an interest rate of 12 to 15% in a first lien deal. That helps your retirement quite a bit. So that's another strategy you could do.
All right, we have another question from the internet. We have Mike here, and Mike asks, if I only have 10 years or so to retire and feel woefully behind in savings plus too much debt, can a whole life policy be designed for both paying down debt and investing in real estate at the same time?
Hypothetically, yes, but let's face the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Most debt that American families have right now is a good chunk of it is high interest bad debt, like credit cards. Let's just say your credit card's 20%. Let's go with a low number. You got this debt for 20%, and you keep paying that debt every single month. But then you're saving money up. So you got the debt, you're trying to pay that down, and then you're saving up over here in another account trying to buy real estate, which adds another level of risk. And it's probably going to get your return. I don't know. I mean, what are you getting in rental? You're 8, 7, 8, and maybe you're getting 50. I don't know. It's going to vary. I never really did anything over double digits in real estate. So, and I thought I bought right. So real estate is going to add risk. It's going to add work, and your return's not going to be super good. But wouldn't it just be easier to focus 100% on the debt, pay all the bad debt off, recapture that 20%, because now your money's making you 20%. Once the debt's gone, then go out there and start using that money to then go buy real estate. Even if you got to get a mortgage to get the real estate at that point, you've created all this cash flow because you took back the crazy interest and payments you were making to the debts. Don't try to, a lot of people go too wide when they're trying to build wealth, when a lot of times the problem is right in front of your nose, and the problem's always debt. You can't build wealth, heavy wealth, with bad debt. It's just, it's like what, water or oil and water. They just don't mix.
You have to invest in yourself first.
Yeah, invest in yourself, get rid of the debt. Just focus on that sole thing. And we could run a calculation, because maybe your debt's not all bad. We could run a calculation to see if that makes the most sense. But trying to buy real estate and pay down debt, if there's just not enough juice to go for both, then you're never going to be successful in either one. That it?
That's so far.
Awesome. Wow, thanks everybody for sticking around for all the questions. Anyone have any additional questions? Did everybody feel like they learned something? You look like you had another question. No? Awesome. Yes.
I'm not gonna lie.
I'll repeat the question. Okay.
I mean, I understand the recycling concept,
Mm-hmm.
but at which point, like, if you do retire and you don't have a paycheck to make those premiums or premium payments, sorry, then how, like, can you use this to live on? Like, I mean, at some point, do you just cancel the policy and take the cash value out?
No. So I thought I was going to use the board, but I'm actually just going to come up here. So what you're saying is you get to that point where you're retired. So let's, most people view 60 as retirement. You got this retirement, you put this money in, whether or not you used it or not, but let's just pretend you got 260 grand in it. And at this point, you're going to retire. You're going to start drawing income out. Let's just say maybe you're a little behind the 8 ball and you just don't have enough, to handle it. Remember what I said, at that point, you could just stop making the premium deposits if you had to. Like if there just wasn't enough cash flow, you RPU it, all the cash value is still there. It will continue to keep growing exactly how we're showing it here. It'd be a little less because you're going to subtract out the extra money going in, but you just build the policy to suit your need. You build the policy around what it is you want that to do. So, because you were talking about retirement. So, if you're building a policy, there has to be, you don't just build this with the intent. I typically won't just set this up if somebody just wants to put money in the whole life and not do anything, unless you had a compelling reason and you said to me, well, it's still better than a bank account. And then I couldn't disagree with you. It is. But the way we always want to do it is we always want to find some type of opportunity over here to take your money, the cash value out, and use it to make more. So remember, if your cost of capital, I'm just going to keep this simple. These aren't the exact numbers, but let's say your loan interest on the policy is 5%. We would never want to take a loan out of the policy unless we could earn more than 5%. So that's your cost of capital. A bank would never pay you 6, or let's say pay you 4 and lend you money at 3. It would never ever happen. So you would never do that. So if you're going to borrow at 5, you got to find a way to make more than 5%. And that could be real estate, because like I showed you, lending is 12 to 18 right now. You could do credit card debts, which are usually 20+%. You could do car loans, which are usually about 8%. You need to have somewhere for that money to go where it's going to exceed the cost. And then if you get, and then remember, all these things are the extras. You're going to take that and that's going to recycle back in we're just going to call that recycle and recapture. You're just recapturing the money that you're making. Instead of giving it into a bank, you're just putting it back into the policy. This becomes your hub for the money that you earn over here. Then when you hit retirement, well, a couple things. You could take a loan out. You could get good at something like private lending. And then this income that you make from this, you just eliminate this. Okay? You just cut that out. And then this income you live on. Or you take this income and some of that is to live on. And then you just give the bare minimum back, which is just the interest cost. So you just give 5% back. That keeps the policy really healthy. But as the policy gets older, be honest, you'd never hear me teach it this way, but at a certain point in every policy, if you didn't recapture the money, it really wouldn't hurt you too bad in the long run, because you're making so much in compound interest. So if at that retirement point, you literally just used your cash value to generate an income, and you just lived on that would work too. And you could even over here, remember I said you could do what's called an RPU, which stands for reduce paid up. All it means, the insurance company looks at it and says, hey, you paid up this much death benefit, so we're going to give you this much death benefit for the rest of your life, and all your cash value stays intact. But now, no new money has to go into the policy. Your premium goes to 0.
But you can still take loans from it?
Oh, of course. Nothing changes from the cash value. So if you RPU'd any of the policy any year after the 10th year, your cash value it's exactly what it was. There's no reduction to your cash value. The future growth is reduced a little because you're just not putting new money in. So, but it's still growing. You're still getting the same guaranteed interest rate, same dividend. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Good question. How long have I been talking?
212. All right, we have another question here. This is from Black Air Forces. Is there an estimate off the top of your head of what I can dump in? I can possibly save $40,000 to $50,000 for a dump in. I do have a 401k. I'm going to lower contribution and have a pension as well.
Perfect. Yeah, so you got a pension. That's great. And thank you for your service. Number 2, with the 401k, figure out what they match you, reduce down to the match. If you get a 4% dollar for dollar match, reduce your contribution to 4%, redirect the dollars and cents over here. The dump in can be anything you want. I mean, I have real estate developers that put millions of dollars in as a dump in. Like they got the money over here that they were going to buy real estate with. They dump it into the policy, immediately take it out, buy the real estate, and then take the interest or whatever they're earning on the real estate and put it back in the policy. So there's no, it's whatever you want. We can design it to do whatever you want. That's the easiest answer I can give you.
You just said that they immediately take it out and buy property. Earlier, you said you try to teach people to wait 3 years. What earlier when you started, you said you designed policies that you don't.
Oh, no, I just said in the first 3 years, the policy's not efficient.
Okay.
Oh, I would never, ever, ever, ever want anyone to wait. I want, literally, if we have somewhere for money to go, always take it out immediately. Don't ever, ever, ever wait if we have somewhere where we can earn more than what the cost of capital is.
So you're just a little upside down the first 3 years.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. But really, not really. That was just that example. I mean, you look at all these ones. I mean, you're upside down for 1 year. You're positive year 2. Remember, I was giving you examples that were really bad in the presentation? Yeah, it just depends on the policy. Yeah, please don't ever wait. Like what we teach is banking. So a bank doesn't take your deposits and put it in the vault and be like, oh, we're just going to sit on this for a couple of years. No, they lend that out to make money. You need to do the same. Yeah, but we've got to have somewhere for that money to go before you take a loan. Like don't put money in and just be like, oh, he said take the money out right away. I've had people do that, believe it or not. I've had people do it and they said, Chris said take money in the loan immediately in the first 30 days. I'm like, yeah, great. What did you do with it? Oh, it's just in the bank. I thought we were just supposed to take a loan. Shit, you're not. When you have thousands of people you help with, you got all sorts of stories, but it has happened. But then we course correct them and we're like, we got to get that money working for you, man. Yeah.
Put it to work. So is this, like, I don't know much about, like in this type of investing. So is this similar to like an index fund or like a Roth IRA? Like, is this an investment vehicle for people looking to invest?
So first off, it's not an investment because it's guaranteed. So you can only call something an investment when it actually has risks to it. There's no risk. You're 100% guaranteed with the contract from the insurance company. So it wouldn't be like an index fund, a Roth. It would be similar to a Roth because it's tax-free, but it's tax-free without the rules that come along with a Roth. So we used to, when I used to do this as an advisor, call these what do we call them? The super Roths, until we got our hands slapped by compliance. Because a Roth IRA, why people put money into them is because they put after-tax dollars in and they take it out tax-free. That's a huge advantage, especially if you can take all that deferred interest out tax-free. You could do the same thing here. Like, here when we're putting money into the policy, I mean, let's just say down here, 20 years, let's say this was like a Roth, you made $132,070 on it. And if you took all that out, that's all tax-free. So that's just like a Roth. But a Roth has phase-out limits. Now, if you're married, Zach, do you know the new phase-out limits? Is it like 230 for married couple and like 160 for single?
I think it's lower than that.
It might be lower, but you can look it up. Just look out the phase-out limits. There's income phase-out. So if you make more single, if you're a single filer than like 130 or 160, I don't remember 2025, you can't put money in a Roth. You never income phase out in this.
So there's a limit. If you make a certain amount of money,
you didn't get the memo? Of course there is. Anything good, anything that makes sense for you, there's always going to be rules.
I've heard of a lot of people, talking about Roth IRAs and investing, pulling money out of their Roth IRA and using it for real estate.
Yeah, that's self-directed Roth IRAs are great. And those are amazing.
I didn't know
things.
There's a limit. You could only make X amount of money.
Are you married and file, like you married? We can look it up. I mean, I just did it the other day. I think it's like 230 something, 231 or something like that. So if you make more than that, man, you can't put money in a Roth.
Interesting.
You could backdoor it. Yeah. I don't know whoever came up with the backdoor thing, but yeah.
Okay.
So it's not like those. Here, this is also another really important thing. So pay attention, virtual audience too. You never want to look at this as, should I put money into this? Or should I put money into an index fund? Or should I put money into this? Or should I buy real estate? Because if you do that, you're kind of comparing apples to apples. This is, you put money into this and you do that. So it's this and that, not this or that. Because the thing you got to understand is, I hear this a lot. They're like, well, why would I do this when I can put money into real estate and make a better return? I say, then you clearly didn't listen to what I'm saying, because you put money into this and then you take the money out of this and you put it into real estate and you make money 2 times, not once. So a Roth cannot do that. No other vehicle actually can do that on earth, with the exception of maybe like a margin account on a big stock portfolio. I don't know what the thresholds are, but probably need at least $500 to $1 million in a stock portfolio to get a margin. And then you can borrow on margin, but margin's tied to prime. Prime is not healthy right now. Prime, what, 5 or something like that? What is prime, Brandon? 5.5 still?
No, it's like 6.
Oh, yeah, prime's higher. That's right. That's the Fed rates. So it's like 6%. So if you were to borrow from a margin account, it's going to be prime plus a couple points. So probably prime plus 3. So you're like 8-9% to borrow from a stock account. The beauty of an insurance company is when they make loans, remember, it's a zero risk loan for them. A margin account has risk because if a margin account, if they're lending you money based on stocks, in one day, those stocks could swing 10, 20. I mean, heck, they could go down 30%. It has happened before.
There's really no other investment or
Savings vehicle.
yeah, savings vehicle or any type of vehicle where you can take the money, put money in, immediately take it out, use it twice. Exactly.
But that's exactly why.
New to me, right?
So this is exactly why the wealthiest families throughout history have used this. This before Nelson Nash did that book and brought this to the mainstream public. This was always being used, but by the wealthiest families. If you go back in history and you look up the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and the Morgans and Stanleys, predominantly the Rockefellers and the Morgan and Stanley families. Back then, they had so much money. Banks were falling apart. Remember that when there was runs on banks and banks were very weak. I wouldn't say banks are much stronger today, but let's just pretend that they are. But these wealthy families like them, and the Morgans were bankers, and so were the Stanleys. So they got together and they looked for a better place to store their massive amounts of wealth. And they looked through all the financial institutions and they came up with mutually owned life insurance companies are the most stable. They're always playing the long game. They're taking the least amount of risk. They never go out of business. They're the safest financial institutions. So let's find a way to save our money and put our money with the insurance company. So they walked into the building. Back then, New York Life was a big insurer. Walk in and they'd say, hey, can we deposit our millions of dollars in your insurance company? And the insurance company said, no, we're not a deposit institution. So they got together and they said, how do we do this? Well, a whole life policy was the way you get your money into the general account and get the returns of the general account. So they started buying whole life policies. Now, none of those MEC rules existed back then. So they literally could take $10 million, dump it into an insurance policy and have it all be tax-free. That changed in 1988 when the oil tycoons got really greedy and they were using life insurance at they were using single premium whole life, dumping money in whole life policies, and then that money was always tax-free. The IRS looked at that and said, come on, guys, we know what the tax code says, and we've kept it that way because all of us have our money in those whole life policies too, but you're abusing this, so we got to put some limits, which is why now there's the MEC 7 pays. So again, I'm just reiterating that this is nothing new. Walt Disney, I'll give you a couple other ones you can look up. Walt Disney, look up how he funded Disneyland was the first one. A loan from his New York Life policy. Look up Ray Kroc, and you can watch the movie Founder, where they don't talk about it in the book how, or in the movie how, but you remember the point where he's with that guy, and the guy said, you're in the real estate business, but he didn't have a lot of money because he was leveraged at that point. So how he started that real estate and the Ronald McDonald marketing campaign was loans from his whole life policies. He might have. Actually, I should watch that movie Founder again and see it. There's a point, maybe he did do a call with the insurance company. Takes a loan from his life insurance. Pampered Chef, same thing. She took a loan from her whole life because no bank would lend these people money. They got turned down by every bank. So then they became their own bank. Oof.
Okay, we have a question from the internet. Matthew asks, could a corporation do a group of them for all board members without physicals? If not, would a trust help with that? How to avoid that concern of being high risk? Would a higher dump help? Thanks.
All right, so let's go to the company owned, corporate owned. This is done every single day. I mentioned that banks are the #1 purchasers of whole life, but I didn't tell you how. So if any of you ever walked into a bank, I got to frame this up right. You walk into a bank, every time you go into a bank, you see vice presidents. There are lots of vice presidents in banks, but you never ask the question, why does a bank need so many vice presidents? Well, a bank is a corporation. And a corporation cannot buy a life insurance policy on a corporation because they need a body to insure. But a company needs to have an insurable interest in an employee in order to take a policy out. Income vice presidents. So a vice president is executive of a bank, therefore an insurable interest. So the insurance company takes our money, what they call their tier 1 capital, diverts it into buying policies on their vice presidents. They have to share some of it with their vice presidents. So they say, okay, Mr. Vice President or Mrs. Vice President, for you being promoted, you're going to get a raise of 52 cents. Okay, we're going to give you that. You're going to get a retirement package called the Deferred Compensation Plan, which basically mandates that you stay here for 20 miserable years. We're going to give you a 2% raise every year. So you stay here for 20 years, and then we're going to give you an income after that. Oh, and by the way, Mr. Vice President, we're going to give you a fully paid up $50,000 life insurance policy. The insurance company goes out and buys a policy on that employee or that vice president, and how much do you think the death benefit is? Well, it ain't 50 grand. It's probably like 2 million. So they wait it out. That person dies. Family gets 50 grand. Insurance or bank gets all their money back, and then some, and then some. They got to use all the money the whole time to fund that deferred comp and health insurance. So you mentioned a board. No different. Okay. A board, technically, probably by definition, would be an insurable interest for any company as long as it's a board that you could prove the insurability and the importance. If one of those board members died, the company would suffer. So yes, the company definitely could fund policies for every one of those board members or key employees, as we would call that. And they could do it from company funds. And that's called COLI, company-owned life insurance. And you could build a retirement plan from a company. It would be called a deferred compensation arrangement or a split dollar. So a company for that board member could create a whole retirement package, a golden parachute package, using specially designed whole life. You can see like this stuff goes far and wide, and it's used every day right under your nose. You just never knew it was used this way. I just happen to be the guy that's out there teaching all of us how this works in the big scale, or the big leagues, I guess you would call it, whatever you want to call that. Yeah, you already had this book.
Yeah.
So what am I gonna? I got a bunch of shirts up front. You want a shirt? Who in here has not gotten a book? You don't have any? You don't have my books by now? You have 3, okay. You have a book? Which one do you want? Well, don't say anyone, because I'll give you a children's book, but that's for children. Yeah, this is a really good one. Yeah. The children's book?
No, is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's so sweet.
It's called The Companion. Yeah, me and Hannah wrote it for children. It's about this little furry critter called the Companion and a little girl who's technically my daughter. But in theory, if you really read the story, the Companion is the life policy. The little girl is the client, and she's abusing the policy. It's such a cute little story. I don't want to ruin it by trying to make it about IBC, because it's really not. But it's a lot like the Giving Tree, and it's a lot like the Giving Tree or the Missing Piece. Yeah. So. What's everybody want? Want this, or do you want one of the other ones?
I got kids.
It's really cute. You'll get a lot out of it. You'll actually probably get just as much as your kids. Anything else? Some of you are probably like, no, just let me go. Well, the door's always been open. Thanks everybody for coming out. Thank you everybody for being here for the virtual. Again, if you want to book a call with us, use that QR code that I gave you earlier, or just give us that paper with your name, number, and email, and we'll set up a call with you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
Yeah.